Back to True Crime Gas Podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
Look, we're not going to get into why we were gone for so long. You guys know I had another kid.
Yeah.
It was the holidays.
Right. I was
It's a
moving.
new year.
I moved.
Michael moved. Like, literally
it's a
everything
lot
that
of
could have
shit.
happened, except no one died,
Right.
thank God.
Yeah. We don't got to explain to you.
Yeah.
Bunch of fucking freeloaders. Start the fucking episode.
No, we're very happy to be back in studio. We've got a
We
lot of
are.
energy. Michael gave me a Bang energy drink.
Yeah, get
it's not
some
a
of that.
sponsor, but it should be because it's some good shit.
Oh my God, y'all. If you've not tried these things are legit. Like, I don't like energy drinks. I don't. And like I said, they're
Your
not a
day's
sponsor.
going along all like normal, like it's sloppy, like it normally is. And
Right.
God, and then bang!
Bang.
This energy drink
And
hits
it's
you in the
like,
face.
I got shit to do.
Let's record a podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're back in studio. We're gonna hit 2019 hard and heavy.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming at you. Maybe you never know what's around the corner.
Right. Who knows?
No promises.
Keep your eyes peeled.
We're looking at hitting it hard and heavy. That's our plan, okay?
Right.
But sometimes life hits you in the face like a Bang energy drink.
That's right. Sometimes. But maybe
However,
these Bang energy drinks will maybe help us hit it back a little bit.
this episode that we studied for, that we're going to present to you right now, was one that we were really excited about. We found this one, we're like, this is so perfect for our show. Like, this is a perfect show. It's like
got everything.
It's got everything in it. We were going to end the year with it. We ended it
Yep.
with Jonestown and me having another kid instead.
Yeah.
So now we're starting out 2019 hard with this crazy story of two men's
Yep.
lives colliding that have, that are completely different people. Crazy
Yeah.
story. It has a serial killer in it who's very interesting. It has two creep vans in it. It has the cartel briefly in it.
So what Lauren is
Drug
trying to
dealing.
say is that our case suggestions from here are going to go straight downhill.
Yeah,
It can't get any
2019
better
peaked
than
in
this.
January.
It's it. It peaked January 6th. It's over. Thanks for tuning in.
Right.
No, no, we'll come up with some crazy shit.
Right. Yeah, we'll find some more stuff.
Yeah.
But for now, let's focus on this one because it's the dream episode.
It is. Let's do it.
I didn't want to keep living my life the way I was living it. I wanted things to be different, but I guess I didn't really do the right thing to change the way my life was going.
What was Larry like around young women growing up?
Very awkward, quiet, backward.
Did he ever talk to you about these urges? He reportedly says he had urges about women.
Oh my gosh, it was absolutely, it was out of bounds. Larry, just like Jimmy King calls him, and he's a baby killer.
You think your brother is a baby killer?
I don't have no doubt in my mind.
Do you think your brother killed more than Jessica Roach?
Yes.
He says you can get solid confessions from him, and if you can help us locate the bodies that are still missing, we're willing to completely wash your record.
You were the guy women wanted to be with and guys wanted to be best friends with.
Something like that.
Do you like having people terrified of you just a little bit?
Well, in that kind of sport, sure, you have to. Well, that's why they called me the assassin.
You were the assassin.
Yes, my nickname was the assassin. And the reason my name was the assassin is because I put somebody out of every game I've ever played.
I don't have no doubt in my mind. He's a baby killer.
All right, our case this week, we used a book. We found this book.
In with the devil.
This case you've probably surely not heard of unless I don't know how you heard of it. Maybe you just stumbled
Maybe
across
they
it.
saw the documentary.
But I would say like a good
right.
85, 90% of our audience probably hasn't heard of this case before. It's just kind of flies under the radar, but it's
I
just
hadn't.
it's such a cool story.
I'm really surprised I hadn't at least heard of the killer in the story.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
I
This
was-
serial killer, I
yeah.
mean, he's got a big body count and he's just interesting.
He's an interesting character. Being a twin.
Being a twin and also being he killed most of his victims allegedly when he was off. Well, I mean, he was proven on 2 of them, right? Out of potentially 39.
Right.
He would go on these Civil War reenactments. Was it Revolutionary War or Civil War? I think it was a little bit of both, right? He was
both, but mostly Civil War.
a history buff.
Yeah.
He had mutton chops, and he would
Yep.
go on these Civil War reenactments. He would go to these towns to go to these because he was one of those guys.
Yep.
And that's when he would kill people. So it's
Yep, on his way there.
Yeah.
It was funny because like one of his friends growing up that used to go to some of these reenactments with him said it was almost like he enjoyed the ride more than he did the actual
Oh, yeah,
reenactment. That's because he was probably looking for people the whole time.
It's the hunt.
Yeah.
A lot of serial killers, like Gary Ridgway, wasn't he? He just drove all the time. That's just looking for his next score type of thing. He knew where to go to, the hot spots where the sex workers were and stuff. But still, he just drove and drove. And I think that was the same with BTK.
Yeah.
Lots of miles, just driving around hunting, just looking, just
you're right.
observing people and following them. This dude was a stalker, like to the max. In his creep van, he had 2 of them.
Yeah, the lesson here is if you're going to be a serial killer, you got to keep up the maintenance on your car, right?
Well, yeah, especially like in the the days that he was working.
Right. In the north or in the Midwest, snows, a lot of snow.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of salt up underneath there.
A lot of tires you're gonna go through.
Yeah,
That's the price you pay to be a prolific serial killer.
That's right. That's right.
So the book we got, it's called In with the Devil: A Fallen Hero, a Serial Killer, and a Dangerous Bargain for Redemption. The serial killer that we're talking about is Larry Dwayne Hall. You've probably not heard of him. Supposedly he killed 39 or more. There's
probably
a lot of missing persons that he's linked to. We don't know.
Right.
We probably never will know because he only talked so much.
Right. You've probably heard of his brother Gary, though.
Gary and
Gary
Larry?
Hall?
No.
Totally not making that up. That's his real brother's name.
Yeah, Gary and Larry Hall. We'll get more into them later.
Yeah, they're interesting.
But one of the most
dudes.
interesting things about this case is not even the serial killer himself. There's another super interesting person in this case.
There is.
That we're going to start with, and his name's Jimmy Keene. Jimmy Keene, his world collides with serial killer Larry Dwayne Hall later in this story, but for now we're going to start with Jimmy Keene, who's kind of like Mr. Captain America, really.
Yeah, he is. Have you ever seen the movie Megamind, the kids movie by DreamWorks? There's a guy in there, Metro Man, and I imagine that's Jimmy Keene as a kid. He was like the star pupil, and like he like saved the teacher from the villain like during school, and he was just like this super kid. Like he was good at everything, and everybody loved him.
Yeah, and he wrote the book. He co-authored the book that we studied this case on.
Right. So take it for what it is. I mean,
yeah, there was some bias to it.
It's basically an autobiography.
However, I will say that I feel that the other author, Hillel Levin, was the guy that really wrote the book, and then he turned to Jimmy Keene and got like insight on certain things that happened.
Certain things?
Because he
I
had a
pretty
lot
much
of
everything, dude.
The book was very in depth on the serial killer, which how would Jimmy Keene know a lot of? I guess he got debriefed by the people that. We'll get into that.
Right.
We don't want to give away the whole story just yet. But when Jimmy Keene first heard the judge deliver his sentence in July of 1997, he said it knocked the life right out of him. 120 months was the exact term the prosecutor in the case had recommended after Keene agreed to a plea deal. Still, he pleaded with the judge, "I know I did something wrong, but not to ruin my whole life. 10 years will ruin my life." Jimmy felt numb after the judge's announcement. He likened it to a terminal cancer diagnosis. He felt hopeless in a helpless way he had yet to experience. Keene thought surely he had hit rock bottom until he turned to look at his parents. He heard his mother before he saw her, as her sobs were amplified in the courtroom. When marshals grabbed his arm to lead him out of court, he was able to catch a glimpse of his father. Big Jimmy Keene was his idol and best friend. When Jimmy saw his face, he looked lost, his pale face and eyes unfocused. Big Jim went to see Jimmy at Ford County Jail as soon as he was able to after the sentencing. The men sat across from each other, a pane of bulletproof glass between them, and according to Jimmy, they cried like babies. Now, that was the worst day of Jimmy Keene's life to that point. He was a young man.
Right.
And we'll get to how that happened, but first let's go into his background. You're going to learn more about this Jimmy Keene, Captain America, whose father was Captain America as well.
Right.
Just the genetic bloodline of just badasses.
Right.
And so Jimmy grew up in Kankakee, Illinois, a small town south of Chicago, suburb.
Yeah, like Kankakee.
Yeah.
Kankakee.
In 2010, its consensus population was 27,000. And so the Keenes kind of ended up running this place. It sounds like in the book.
It's very close to Chicago, right?
Very close to Chicago.
Yeah.
Still had a presence with the mob. I think some of the mob bosses would kind of hide out in Kankakee, close enough to Chicago, but still kind of quiet, and
Right.
they could make their deals go on there.
But Big Jim, though, he was his hero, wasn't he?
Yeah, Big Jim was larger than life. He was revered by people he worked with at the police and fire department. He's a fucking cop and fireman.
Is that even allowed?
It's like pick one, dude.
Right.
I thought they like compete against each other and shit, don't they?
Yeah. Whose
guy's playing
team
both
does he play
sides.
for in the softball game?
Right.
What's this dude doing?
Whichever wins.
Oh, he's that kind of guy.
He had a gorgeous wife, of course, and important political friends. His wife's family had mafia connections, so Big Jim had friends on both sides of the law.
Hey.
This guy's just everything.
He's a gangster.
Everything. Eventually, Big Jim decided to leverage his connections to start a construction company to make money on the side.
Yeah, it's called a money laundering business.
Of course, you're going to start a construction company when
Right?
you're
It's the easiest
laying
way-
down with the mob. The
Easiest way to launder money.
the mob and
company.
construction, like they go
Hands
hand in
down.
hand.
Yep.
Lynn, Jimmy's mother, had saved to open her own restaurant. They looked like the golden couple with a charmed life, but behind closed doors, their life was in constant turmoil. They fought constantly, and Lynn eventually cheated on Big Jim. They got divorced when Jimmy was 11, which left him between two houses. He bounced between a house with his stepfather, who liked to drink,
Right.
and his own father, whose bachelor lifestyle didn't quite have room for Jimmy. Well, yeah,
and his-
good-looking young teenage Jimmy comes home, and all of a sudden, Big Jim's
Yeah.
chicks
Right.
looking like, damn.
He's like, I can't be bringing chicks home with this
I
dude.
think I want little Jimmy.
Right. Exactly. But I wonder how much. It says that his mom and dad fought all the time, but I wonder how much time he could have had for her being a firefighter and a cop.
Right.
And he had ties in the community. That dude was so fucking busy.
Yeah.
He didn't
And-
have a second. He
and
didn't
the-
have downtime.
The book described his relationship with his wife as like he kind of wanted a stay-at-home mom who's going to cook and have dinner when he got, and that wasn't her.
No, she was a little more how you say outgoing.
He wanted his cake and he wanted to eat it too because he wanted the the prize wife or whatever. He wanted
trophy wife.
The trophy wife.
Right.
Good looking, fun.
But stay your fine ass at the house. I don't want
She
people
owned that
looking at you.
restaurant, which was also
Yeah.
a bar, and she would work the bar late into the night and have fun and all that. And
Yeah.
and it just
I'm sure she made great tips.
yeah. So Jimmy's bouncing around from his father and his stepfather's house. Sports were his escape, and his early martial arts training ensured that no one messed with him. He was known for getting into and winning fights with multiple opponents.
Ho-ho.
This guy, he never loses a
He
fight
never
in this
loses
book,
a damn
and you have
fight.
to wonder, like,
Here's the thing.
how could you go to prison and all this shit and be like undefeated as
Right. Like
he gets jumped by 3 giant dudes and he just somehow fucks them all up.
right. That's my thing too. I'm like, I'm not a fighter, okay, but I do know.
Michael's a lover.
That's right. But I do know in order to get good at something, you got to get your ass whooped.
Yeah.
A lot. I played a lot of sports growing up, and I got my ass whooped a lot before I had triumphs. So you don't become as good a fighter as he says without getting that ass handed to you a few times. Don't you think?
Shout out to my jiu-jitsu coach. I'm a white belt right now, and I recently went back to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, how's
Been
that going for you?
Training with Coach Steve. And yeah, that's pretty much the deal. You go in, you get your ass kicked,
Right.
And
That's
then
how
you
you
just keep
learn,
showing
right?
up. If you got that fortitude to just keep going, you
Yep.
can let your ego go to the side and just keep
Yep.
getting your ass kicked. Eventually, you'll be the ass kicker, and that's my plan.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
But Jimmy Keene was always the ass kicker.
He was
never got
always
his ass
that. I
kicked.
guess not. No.
He was the guy kicking asses.
Yeah. Good for him. Good for you, Jimmy.
There are those guys. To be fair,
Yeah.
there really are. Like there's white belts that'll show up to the gym and kick just about everybody's ass.
Really?
It happens.
Wow.
I mean,
Or they
not
just-
the black belts
Right.
or the brown belts. Probably not the purple belts, but like the guys that have been training for a while that aren't that great.
Yeah.
There's guys that can just show up and kick their ass.
Right.
It does happen.
What? They're just physically.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're just bigger.
Yeah.
More in shape. Got you.
Yeah. There's freaks.
Or they have a background in like wrestling or something like that.
Oh, that helps.
Oh,
That
I'm
was
sure
one
it
of Jimmy's.
does.
That was one of Jimmy's things. Badass wrestler. That he would use that to kick
Yep.
many asses.
Yes.
Jimmy's athletic success and ability to win a fight made him popular with the rich kids. And after his father had a brush-in with a narcotics case, kids at school assumed that Jimmy had access to drugs and constantly asked if he had any dope. This bothered Jimmy for a little while, and then he
Right.
saw, maybe if I just become what they want me to be,
Wait a second.
start having the drugs when they ask for them,
Right.
get the money,
I already have the demand.
right?
I can just get a supply.
Anybody doesn't pay up, I kick the shit out of them.
Right. He's
It's a
already got a
win-win.
reputation. That's true.
Jimmy saw an opportunity to make some money and keep hanging with the rich kids. That was another thing. Is like that was the one place he felt inferior. It's like on the court, on the football field, on the wrestling mat. Like he's the man.
Right.
In general, he's the man. But then he gets around these rich kids. They've got 2 boats because their parents, they've got a trust fund and all this shit.
Right.
And he's rolling up in his fucking hoopty. He had some shitty car, and it was like that's kind of what he was known for, is like being a badass, but he had no money, and it kind of bothered him. So he decided to just, when people came up and asked him to drugs, he'd just have them this time instead of
There you go.
saying, "That's my dad, not me, man."
Yeah.
You don't understand.
Right.
He ends up building a network, recruiting his football and wrestling teammates to deal for him.
Because they're already popular.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're already popular. They're probably the bigger guys in the school. No one's going to fuck you over. Nobody's not going to pay.
Yeah, and
You know what I mean?
And they knew if someone didn't pay one of his cronies, they'd have to deal with Jimmy Keene.
Yeah, exactly.
Show up and fucking throw you to the moon. After high school, he chose to go to a community college in Chicago to continue to expand his empire. After 2 years, so he had offers, scholarships for like football and shit, and to leave
Yeah,
town.
but the money he was making in that
Dude,
area.
he's making bank selling drugs. He's taking
Yeah.
off. Like, this business is getting big.
Right.
After 2 years, he stopped going to class so he could deal full time. Jimmy's biggest supplier was a father-son team with deep connections to the mob in Chicago. Eventually, the son convinced Jimmy to expand into cocaine. That's when it goes wrong.
Yep.
I'm watching Narcos Mexico right now. It's
Oh,
going
are
from
you?
weed to coke, and that's when it's
Yeah.
going to get crazy.
Yep.
It always does. He explained to Jimmy how much more money he could make moving less product. Well, yeah, instead of selling 50 pounds of pie, you can have 10 pounds of coke. You know,
Exactly.
make
A
more
truckload
money.
of pots, like 2 suitcases of Coke. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jimmy soon was netting over $400,000 a year. After his sophomore year of college, he stopped attending classes to focus full-time on his empire. The most satisfying thing about making all this money was that he could help his dad, who was struggling at this time, post-divorce from his wife. I guess his ex-wife was taking for everything. She's taking his motorcycle, all of his stuff.
He's lost a lot of credibility.
Well, she started.
Sure he's-
She started dating, like, the guy that she cheated on him with was a guy that he worked with. I think either at the police department. I think it was the police department.
Yeah.
And so it was like also like embarrassing. Like, now the guy that she's with, that he worked with, that she cheated on him with, is gonna be riding around on his fucking motorcycle. It's super fucked up, man.
That is fucked up. Oh, see you at the office, Jim.
Brutal. You bang my wife and now you ride my motorcycle.
Right.
That's
Oh,
killing.
Fuck that guy.
That's means to kill.
Yeah, that's messed up.
That's when you want the good old days and you pull out your 6-shooter.
Right. Shoot him right off the iron horse. I hear you.
Ghost ride it right up to you, jump on that shit, and keep going.
Shoot him while he's coming at you and then jump on the bike after his body falls off of it.
Jimmy Keene could do it.
Oh, he could do it.
And
yeah.
if he could do it, Big Jim could do it,
Big Jim probably taught him.
right? Well, you never ghost rided your dead man's bike.
That was really yours from your
Right.
first marriage.
Classic moves. Done it at least twice. Jimmy saved his father from financial ruin more than once. His father was everything to him, and he would have done anything to make his life better, even at his own expense. Now, you mentioned before the podcast, we were talking about this book and how Jimmy never really seemed to take responsibility for his actions, or seemed like he wouldn't admit to doing anything wrong. He always has a
Right.
reason for why he does things, like
Yeah.
the drug dealing. It's, I got to help my dad. It's like,
I mean, I feel like
I think that was a byproduct, yeah, but he didn't start doing it because he wanted to help his dad. He started doing it so he could fit in with the rich kids, right?
Exactly. But he doesn't. But that becomes such a little side note.
Another thing we forgot to mention that we used to study this was a show called To Catch a Serial Killer on CNN. You can find it on YouTube if you type in Larry Dwayne Hall and Jimmy Keene.
Right.
Yeah, we use that. And
It's a really good one.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
interviews Jimmy Keene a lot. You can
Yeah.
see that ego on display and his devilish good looks.
Right.
Movie star good looks. He was almost a movie star. He hung out with Tom Cruise. And
course he
great
did.
movie. What the hell is that pool movie called with Tom Cruise back in the day? The Color of Money. I guess he was an extra on that, and him and Tom Cruise just hit it off, and they went around flying in helicopters together. Or some
Oh,
bullshit.
come on.
Jerked each other off.
Did,
Who knows? And of course, Tom Cruise is like, dude, you could totally get in this business, man.
oh my god.
And Scientology.
Yeah, and Scientology.
He's really just trying to recruit
Yeah,
Scientology.
he was.
That's all it was. They were going to take $1 million off his fucking monthly payment that he had to pay to Scientology if he could recruit another guy.
Yeah.
Fuck. Get to the next level, man.
Right.
So Jimmy's got this empire going on in, like his late teens, early 20s after high school. And, he may think he's slick, but the agency's
He's already on the radar, right?
He's on the radar of local narcotics agents. He has been since high school, and their interest in him only grew as his empire did. He frustrated the agents, however, by always setting up transactions with a buffer. He used couriers, which kept him and the police from being able to implicate him. Jimmy poured money into business ventures with his father. Kind of helped him out in a way for like money laundering too. It's like if he takes his money, gives it to his dad who's starting businesses.
Exactly.
He doesn't have to come up with
Right.
reasons for what he's doing with why he's got all this money and shit.
Right.
Because he's driving around in sports cars some of the time. As soon as
Yeah,
he starts
once
dealing
you-
drugs, he's
yeah.
buying everything you can
If
imagine.
you register a brand new Corvette, they're going to be like, "Hey, how did you get this?"
It was a gift, man.
Yeah, it's a gift
Third
from my
one this
dad.
week.
Right? Yeah.
My
It's
dad
crazy.
started a fucking shrimp store.
Shrimp store.
Yeah.
The shrimp. That's what you got.
Dude, That's me trying to improvise, people. The shrimp store. The jerk store called. They're running out of you.
Started a toilet store.
It's the shit.
Oh God,
Terrible.
That was terrible.
So yeah, he poured the money into these business ventures with his dad. The businesses they started together were a way for Jimmy to earn a legitimate income. Only every business they started failed. So explaining how he's driving Corvettes with these failed businesses, that's kind of tough. And it was a vicious cycle in that, you know, the businesses were losing the money. So then he had to deal drugs even more, which he was hoping to go start these businesses and get out of the drug business.
I think his original plan was to get like $5 million and then clean, $5 million clean, and then just like put that away somewhere.
Sounds good, don't
him
it?
and his dad just live the rest of their life.
Sounds like
that was the plan.
It sounds like every episode of Locked Up Abroad. I was just going to do one more. I just needed
Just
10 grand
just
more,
10.
and then I was going to retire.
Right.
You said that the last 6 times.
Like Walter White in Breaking Bad.
Right.
Just a little bit more, and then
It's addicting. I'm sure it's addicting. Can't say that I've ever been a drug dealer, but when you feel the power, man, punching it in that Corvette with a fucking suitcase in the back filled with coke, and you're meeting some.
I think everybody envisions that drug dealers just live the life, man.
Right.
Like they have that high risk, they have that anxiety. I get it, but other than that, you fucking live the life.
Jimmy
Like,
talked about it in the book. He said that it's not as easy as you would think. It's a job. It's like you got to worry about everything. Like you got to worry about law enforcement, always breathing, you know.
right.
being
That's
on
what I'm
your
saying.
tail.
The anxiety of it alone.
Anxiety of law
makes it-
enforcement. Then you got to deal with dealers that could be stealing from you. You got to deal with
Right.
people not paying the dealers. There's a lot of shit you have to worry about, and it's not for everybody. He said 9 out of 10 people would fail at being a drug dealer. So he was tooting his horn even more. He's good at that.
Right. You know.
In November of 1996, the DEA managed to turn an old girlfriend of Jimmy's as well as one of his former dealers. This guy, remember him from the book? He
The
had this.
dude that got captured by the cartel?
Yeah, he had this little weasel of a friend. Yeah, so we'll talk briefly about the cartel. So at one point he gets a connection with the fucking Mexican cartel, and he's making drives in sports cars down to Mexico occasionally, obviously, whenever they call on him, and going down there and making deals with these cartel people. And at one point he has this little weasel friend.
Yeah, he's a local friend, right? Guy he grew up with.
Yeah, who ends up ripping off the cartel.
Well, I think he's like one of Jimmy's underlings, right?
Yeah,
But
he
he's
grew up-
using more product than he's moving.
He grew up with Jimmy. Jimmy was kind of his protector.
Yeah.
This kid's kind of a loser, and for whatever reason, Jimmy protected him. And this dude gets into trouble with Jimmy's boss in the cartel, and Jimmy gets a call from this cartel boss who the book wouldn't name, and he's told to come down there to
Right.
Mexico, and he goes down there, and then actually, when he called him, he could hear his friend in the background, and the cartel guy is telling him he's going to kill him.
Right.
And Jimmy's like, hold on, let's put him on ice. I'll come down there.
Right.
Goes down there, manages to talk the cartel leader out of killing his buddy who fucked up.
Oh,
and
man.
punches his friend right in front of the cartel guy to make a point. So that that whole thing.
But they were already fucking him up pretty good. They had him
they
tied
did.
to a chair in the kitchen.
That whole drive Jimmy was
And-
making from fucking Indiana to Mexico. This
That's a
dude's
long-
getting fucking beaten.
Oh, they were torturing the shit out of him. And they were making him do coke. Like
Yeah.
over and
Oh,
over
yeah.
again, remember?
Yep,
They're
'cause
like,
he was
oh,
a
you like
junkie."
doing coke, huh?
Have some more.
Have some more.
Stupid fuck. Nose is bleeding like crazy.
Right?
Yeah, so Jimmy saves his buddy, and his buddy ends up turning on him to the DEA as well as his ex-girlfriend. And so he pretty much should have let the cartel kill this
Dude,
fucker.
you know that cartel leader was sitting at home watching the news going, I told him. Knew it. I told
Dumb motherfucker.
Fuck you, Jimmy King. I
weasel.
told you. I told you. Should have killed
Should
him.
have let me fucking kill him.
Right?
I had a hold for him already.
Man, they would have never found that dude
Right.
in Mexico, man. That dude would have been gone.
Yeah, so in November of 1996, the DA managed to flip that weasel and Jimmy's ex-girlfriend. And one night while he's making dinner, his door gets busted open off the hinges. He said he heard the doorknob turning, and he's like, couldn't
Yeah.
figure out whether he was imagining it
It was
or not.
funny the way the book described it. He said he was like walking by the door with a plate of food and his doorknob jiggled. And he was like, what? And the next thing you know, they just kick it down.
Yep. 11 DE agents stormed the home, and they knew exactly where his hidden safe was and how to open it because of his ex-girlfriend.
Damn.
He had like some hidden switch behind a toilet or something, and it would open a door. The fucking documentary went into
Why would
his,
he trust them?
the documentary went into his house that he had. It was like 6,000 square foot fucking mansion on overlooking a golf course.
Wow.
And then he showed them the secret door. I guess it's still there. and they searched the house for 24 hours and eventually left with plenty of evidence and his truck in tow. They could take that because he was using it to transport.
They could take
always say anything with wheels.
Yeah.
A few weeks later, they came back to his door and arrested him. His arrest became a media circus, and Jimmy eventually agreed to take a plea deal to save his family the embarrassment of a trial.
Right. Well, it was a media circus for Kankakee, right?
Yeah.
27,000 people. It's a media circus. Take it for what you will.
That, and it's Jimmy Keane, man, the star football player.
Oh, damn.
Star tailback.
Right. People were probably like, dibs on his Corvette.
Exactly. Jimmy believed that the sentence would be based on the minimal amount of drugs found in his home, but Beaumont, the prosecutor,
Savage.
Yeah, Beaumont plays a big role in this whole story that we're about to tell.
Right.
Beaumont insisted on charging him with the alleged amount of drugs his informant claimed to have purchased, which was way more than what was in the house. He was smart enough to not keep that large amount in there, just in case. So they ended up throwing the book at him. What the informant claimed to have purchased from Jimmy was enough to put him away for 10 to 20 years. The judge gave him the full 10 years that the prosecutor, Beaumont, had recommended without parole. Jimmy Keane believed that his life was over, and that's when he had that quote saying, "I know what I did was wrong, but 10 years will ruin my life."
Yeah. I mean, it will, man. 10 years.
Yeah. When he's like 20,
Imagine,
that's your years where you really get your life going.
Right.
When you get out of high school and college, in your early 20s is when you get this.
and think about how much
steamroll.
technology is moving and how much the world is progressing, and he doesn't really have any skills because he dropped out of college. I mean, other than athletic skills, but to be a professional athlete, I mean, that's so minimal. Like, even if he was a standout in college, that still doesn't mean you're going to make it to
there
the
goes your
pros.
athletic prime too. By the time you get out 10 years later,
Exactly.
in your 30s now.
Yeah.
And off to prison Keane went. It didn't take long for him to establish himself. Many fights ensued, with Keane always getting the better of other inmates. He ended up sharing a cell and becoming good friends with Frank Calabrese Sr. You may know him if you're into mob history.
Right.
He was the 26th Street boss of the Chicago outfit. Jimmy would end up also with his son, Frank Jr., because he became such good friends with Frank Sr.
What a family affair in there.
Senior-
And they took Jimmy in because he had an Italian grandmother. Don't
Yes.
forget about that. It's the only reason he
They
was
bonded
allowed in.
over talk of meatballs and garlic.
Right, and playing bocce ball.
He learned how to play bocce ball with the best. Supposedly, the family secrets trial, which is if you know mob history, it's a big part of it. Was brought on by, this is what Keane says after becoming real close with Frank Sr. and Frank Jr. The trial was brought on by Frank Sr., who told his son to roll over on him so that Jr. could get a chance at freedom. They were both locked up. He didn't want to see his son rot away forever, so he told his son to rat on him. And that's Jimmy Keane's kind of side to it after being locked up with them for a while and becoming good friends with them.
Why would he make that up?
Right.
Why
It's
would
a
you
good
make
story.
that up? I mean, but you already.
It sounds plausible too.
I mean, if you're going to make up anything, I would make up playing bocce ball with Frank Calabrese. I wouldn't make up, this whole thing. Like, that doesn't. What I'm saying is, this doesn't really pertain to Jimmy at all.
Yeah.
But it is interesting information.
Yeah. So 10 months into his 10-year sentence, he's just sitting there doing his time and
Right.
just fucking rotting away. Lawrence Beaumont, a guy he never thought would come back to him with any kind of deal, guy that seemed to really get off on throwing a book at him and seeing him go to prison for as long as possible.
Right.
The man who had put him in prison came knocking. Jimmy was led to a small windowless conference room at Ford County Jail. His attorney was sitting at the table. Soon Beaumont breezed in with an FBI agent in tow and slid a fat case file across the table to Jimmy. And he's thinking, what the hell is this?
It's like a scene out of a movie.
He grabs the folder and opens it. On top was a glossy photo of a young woman. Her battered, naked body was sprawled about between rows of corn stalks. Her skin was torn and discolored. At first, Jimmy was thinking, what are they trying to pin on me now?
Yeah,
basically, like,
Dude, that's what I would be thinking.
Right?
Especially if they just threw the book at me
yeah,
as
10
a
years.
dealer. Yeah.
Now they're making sure I don't ever get out.
Right.
10 years, I get out in my early 30s, and if they fucking pin some murders on me.
Dying in here.
Yeah, at first he assumed this was to pin this crime on him, and he said as much out loud. Beaumont made no response. He just looked at Jimmy with continued interest. Jimmy paged further into the file and saw multiple pictures of teenage girls, some of mutilated bodies and some of smiling, glossy headshots that looked like they belonged in a yearbook. The very last picture in the file was of a man who looked like he belonged in another time. He had a chubby face framed by slick hair, a trim mustache, and mutton chops.
Those mutton chops, though.
And that was by intention, trying to look as old timey as possible. When you learn more about the man in the picture that he's looking at,
Right.
his eyes calmly stared off into space and did not look at the camera. The photo looked like it should have come from the 1890s and not the 1990s. This man's name was Larry Dwayne Hall, who we talked about earlier in this episode. And Larry liked to kill teenage girls, or at least that's what Beaumont was trying to prove. Hall was currently in prison, convicted on the abduction and murder of Jessica Roach, who was the body in the cornfield picture, the one on the top of the folder.
Right.
Beaumont believed Hall was responsible, however, for as many as 20 other killings. His current conviction was on shaky ground as it was currently facing its second appeal. Hall's first conviction was overturned because police had supposedly coerced his confession. Conviction number 2 was also facing appeal, and Beaumont didn't think that he was going to be able to keep Hall in prison much longer if they didn't get more.
Right. The third appeal, it's not looking good, man.
Yeah, because people hear about the first 2.
Right.
Not only that, he kind of like he would confess and then he would say it was a dream. Like I didn't mean all that. Like that was just a dream that I was talking about. Like all those perfect details that fit the crime and everything. You know, I led you right to the body with my dream.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
No, I mean they found the body and then
the jury's like, I don't know.
Right. Jimmy's assignment seemed to be simple at first: befriend Hall and get him to confess to other murders and give up details that had not been released. Then they could use Jimmy to testify against Hall. So they're thinking, okay, this Hall dude, he's weird, he's introverted, he's not going to talk to us anymore.
Right.
And we can't send in to prison some FBI agent undercover because he'll be able to sniff him out right away. He's got a shell, and if you push too hard, he's gonna smell a rat. He's gonna smell a cop.
And also, probably no agent wants that job.
That too. Yeah, go into a maximum
security prison, and then you got to be treated and act like a prisoner.
Right.
Even the guards can't be in on it.
Yeah. No, the guards didn't even know.
Nobody would volunteer for that shit.
Yeah, the idea is for the guards to not even know that Jimmy is on this assignment. Only like the medical. There's like a head of medical.
The psychologist.
The psychologist in the prison knows.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's it.
But he has to keep it a secret from everybody.
Right.
However, in return, if he did do this, if he got Hall to confess to the killing of a specific girl, Trisha Reitler in Cleveland, Ohio, went missing, and she became a huge profile case.
But they not only wanted the confession, they also wanted the location.
They wanted the body. If they didn't get the body, then he wouldn't get freedom.
That was
basically the deal, and they wanted him to testify. Jimmy initially said no, but upon as soon as he said that, his lawyer tapped him on the shoulder. He's like, "Can we get a minute?"
Yeah, right.
And it's like, dude, this deal does not just come across my desk very often. The deal like this is once in a lifetime. This is your chance. You need to do this.
Right.
And so Jimmy ends up agreeing, and Captain America would be off to save the world by busting a serial killer in a maximum security prison.
Right.
Springfield prison, right?
If anybody could do it, man, it's Captain America.
It was an interesting prison too. That Springfield was like a maximum security prison / mental rehabilitation, like mental institution.
Right.
It wasn't your normal prison, man. It was like super lockdown, but also it was really it leaned toward rehabilitation,
right,
and helping inmates as well.
Every prisoner wasn't treated the same there.
Right.
Like even Hall, like Larry Hall had more free run of the place than Jimmy did.
Right.
Which is weird. And their cells were like right across from each other.
Right. Yeah, they set them up right across.
Yeah. I guess because it would disturb Hall psychologically. It's like, this dude's in here for killing somebody. Like, what the fuck? We don't care.
That's a good time to segue into what got Larry Hall locked up and put away for murder, which was the death of Jessica Roach.
Right.
Was the one that got him busted. Jesse Roach went missing in Georgetown, Illinois in September of 1993. The only evidence left behind was her precious mountain bike, which had been tossed to the side of a gravel road. And we could say precious because that's what she used to get around. She lived in a rural area where her dad was a farmer. Police started by combing the area with search teams and dogs. Next, they interviewed those closest to her. She was eventually ruled out as a runaway. And as the people they interviewed got farther away from her inner circle, investigators began to fear it was an outsider and possibly a serial killer that had taken Jesse, which is usually the opposite of what they assume when they first find somebody dead. You know, they think, okay,
Well, the book described it. They said something funny that stuck in my head. They said that cops or FBI investigators, whatever, view serial killers as unicorns. That's like a last thing.
Last resort.
It's like a last resort.
It's because it usually is. It's very rare
Right.
when you
So they're
homicide
not-
is usually the person closest to them.
Right. But
It's
for
not a
them
random attack.
to jump to a serial killer that quickly in this investigation is it's pretty shocking. But if it was that small of a town, you know what I mean?
Right.
But then again, look at Ed Gein. I mean, look how long he operated in his little tiny town.
Right. Man, what
And
did I
they
just watch?
Jump to that.
I just watched something that had this interesting thing that it kind of like, I think your head is in the sand, or you have like a bag over your head if you're an investigator that just comes across a murder victim in in this, especially in like a small town, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this county or whatever. Like a lot of the 70s serial killers, like they find this body and like thinking like, how are you going to jump to serial killer? Because you don't know about the bodies in other counties and other towns. You just know this one body here.
Right.
It's not like 10 bodies popped up in your town
Exactly.
within 2 weeks. Then you're thinking, oh God, we got a serial killer. It's like one murder, and you're trying to like, how can you
Yeah.
connect all those dots? But what I was trying to say was, I don't know if it was in a movie. I just recently heard this or seen this somewhere, and it was basically 3 blind men walk up to an elephant, and they all walk up to different parts of it. And like one walks up to the ass of the elephant, the other one walks up to the
Right.
trunk, the other one walks up to its leg.
Yeah.
And all of them think that's what an elephant is because they're not getting the full picture.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're
Right.
just
They're
getting
just
that one
feeling
piece.
it. I guess they're just reaching there.
And they can't see
They're
the whole
bird
thing.
boxing it.
Yeah.
That's
I did just watch that. Decent. It's
all
all
right.
It's not a bad movie. Sandra Bullock.
right.
So investigators are in the dark with the Jessica Roach thing. They're starting to believe, it couldn't have been someone close to her. It had to have been kind of a random act, which is pretty rare.
Right.
And then 6 weeks after that, a body is found in a cornfield in Indiana. The victim was a young girl, and the naked body was badly decomposed and skeletal in some places. A piece of machinery had clearly run over her body, and at some point, as her head lay a few feet away from her torso, fingerprints determined it was Jessica Roach.
Jesus. What
So
was
now
it?
they have her body finally.
That's crazy. Maybe I don't know if a piece of machinery hit her or not.
I think so. I think she's decomposing, and then
Well,
this
what about-
farmer runs over her body.
What about the notes that Larry had about the Sawzall?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he dismember from time to time, right?
I mean, what? I mean, a piece of machinery. Okay, let's say
Yeah.
let's say a giant lawnmower, like the kind that cut like the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say one is like a tractor is going down with a bush hog, and they hit that. Her body's gonna be in like a million pieces. Not just gonna cut her head off.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it also could have been a coyote or some kind of wildlife, too. Who knows?
Okay, maybe. Okay.
It took nearly a year after her abduction for the police to get any solid leads. Detective Miller, who had worked the case, came across a news story of a man in a van who had harassed 2 14-year-old girls out riding their bikes. The girls were able to escape by using an alley too narrow for the van to drive down. That's the classic creeper van escape right there.
That's right.
You got to find a fucking
gotta-
narrow
they-
alley.
Yeah, if you can just get them away from their van,
Right.
they're awful.
Their wide wheelbase is their downfall.
That's right. That's it's freaking Chevy Astro vans, man. They're not going to fit down there.
Right. After they got away, one of the girls found her father, who drove around looking for the van. They spotted it and wrote down the license plate, which they reported to the police. As it turned out, the same plate had been researched by 3 additional local police departments. The van belonged to Larry Dwayne Hall. Miller called up local police department where Larry Hall lived and inquired about him. The deputy he talked to not only knew Larry, but admitted to growing up with him, which is a big problem in this case, man. Is the local law enforcement in Larry Hall's hometown, which we'll get into, was just so defensive of him, and they just thought he was so innocent.
Dude.
And that he could,
Larry
Larry's a little
Hall,
creepy. He'll follow some girls around, but he would never kill one.
Right. He was a predator in the form of being the victim his whole life.
Yes.
He
100%.
was. Yeah, he preyed on people by being a victim.
Yep.
Yep.
Poor picked on Larry's out raping
That's
and
right.
murdering girls.
Yeah. Who would ever think?
Miller pressed on, talking to this local law enforcement, asking if there was any reason Hall would have been in this area at the time Jesse was taken. He learned that Hall could have been at a Civil War reenactment and traveled all over to different events. He could have been going to one of those. That might be why he was
could
in the
have been.
area. This
Yep.
detective immediately knew, like, yeah, that's Larry's biggest passion is
I was about to say it's
history.
a little more than a hobby for them.
right.
Like
oh,
these
it was a
guys.
lifestyle.
How did they get money to do this stuff?
Well, yeah, he was Larry was a janitor. He had a job, and then his brother, I think, had a legit job too.
It just made it sound like he just was taking enormous amounts of time off and just
It was a
driving all
weekend
over.
thing, probably.
Yeah, that's
That
what I'm thinking
and,
too.
restoring cars and stuff. He was really into classic cars.
Right.
So the policeman tells the detective, it could have been a Civil War reenactment. And so what he does, he calls up the Parks Department and asks if they'd had any Civil War reenactments. Guy goes, no, we haven't had any. He's like, fuck. He goes, but you know what? Actually, we did have a Revolutionary War reenactment.
Right.
Like, yeah, bitch, that falls in the same fucking...
Right, exactly.
They're the same nerds. I mean, if you're into that, too, we're all nerds in our own ways. Okay, I'm not
Exactly.
judging. I'm not judging.
No.
That's kind of cool, man. I'd do
But
that.
I
before
would
go to-
definitely mention that right off the bat. Yeah,
Right.
if there was a Revolutionary War instead of a Civil War.
I love war history. It's shit's interesting to me. I could see in another life being into that for sure.
Yeah, in another life.
Yeah,
You don't got time in this one.
Yeah. So this Revolutionary War reenactment that had been going on in that town where this girl's body was found, this Revolutionary War reenactment had taken place the weekend before Jesse was abducted. So the timeline fit.
Yeah, a little too good.
Yeah. Miller also found out that Hall had been a suspect in the disappearance of a 19-year-old college student 6 months earlier. So he's creeping around, stalking girls.
Yep.
He's connected to another disappearance, and he was in the area at a reenactment the weekend before
Right.
Jessica Roach comes up missing.
He was also an extra in some movies. It's totally off base, but
Oh, some shitty movies.
he was he was in Glory.
I haven't seen that. Is it good?
Yeah, it's pretty good. He's like in the background, like running down a hill or something.
It's a
they say.
creepy little Easter egg there.
Like that
guy's a serial
I
killer.
know. I kind of want to watch it again and see if I can find him. He should be pretty easy to spot, right? With those mutton chops.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause you know he kept them.
Apparently his brother got more FaceTime on the camera. That's just another spite to him. His brother was always a little better.
Which
The book
is
makes,
terrible.
I was going to say the book makes this brother sound like almost on Jimmy Keen's level.
Not
like,
even close.
But then when you see interviews with Larry Hall's brother, Gary Hall,
They're like Kip and Napoleon, bro.
Right?
They're just like them too. And then his brother like kind of talks like that too. Like they're both very like slow, like very monotone, not very much expression. They don't seem like they're ever excited.
after the reenactment, I was chatting with babes all
All day in Larry's van. And then one of them wanted to leave, and I was like, you can't do that.
Larry will stop you.
Larry, get the chloroform. She's trying to get out. I told you to take the door handles off, you fucking idiot.
I tried to kiss her and she wouldn't let me.
She was,
Now we gotta kill
what
her.
was I supposed to do? Go.
So that 19-year-old that had come up missing, that he was a suspect in, Miller remembered that case. It had made national headlines. Police there had moved on from Hall as a suspect, but Miller had enough to go on to bring him in for questioning in the Jessica Roach case with all the connections that he's made now.
Right.
Miller questioned Hall and found him to be very timid. He admitted to driving his van on the day in question, but claimed he had never been to Georgetown, Illinois. Miller produced a map and pressed Hall further, pointing to the area in Georgetown. Were you anywhere near here? Hall said that he could have been in the area looking for an old vehicle. He recalled some landmarks in the town and said he remembered stopping to talk to a few girls just because I like to talk to people.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
police are sitting there like, you like to talk to people, huh?
Yeah, teenage girls, they have tons of
Not
old
getting
cars and parts and stuff.
Not getting the lady killer vibe here.
No, not at all.
Maybe the killer part, but
Right.
not a fucking Rico Suave over here, this guy.
No.
So yeah, he was known to like he just drove around in like all over these towns, different towns on old back roads to try and find old classic cars and girls to kill.
Right.
We come to find out later. But like the local pick-apart guy.
What do you think came first, the classic cars or the girls to kill?
I think it's all in the same bag, man.
Really?
He loves you know.
You think he was just out and was like, man, I could look for car parts while I'm out here.
Yeah, he lived a good 1970 Chevelle, and he also loved a nice 15-year-old girl on a bike alone on a dirt road.
Right. And one and two can be found.
Both
in
get his
any
heart racing.
Right. Both get-
But the local pick-apart guy in the town he grew up in said that like he thought he had all the connections to get these parts that people needed, but Larry would always find some part that he needed that he could never find himself. And Larry'd come in and be like, I found it on that old dirt road back there behind that blue Blazer.
Yeah. But he could have done that like once or twice, and that guy would have given that story.
Yeah, it's true.
People over-romanticize the past. It's ridiculous.
Thanks for killing the Bible.
Yeah, you're welcome. Keeping it real out here.
Yeah. So he says he could have been in that area, you know, where Jessica Roach went missing, looking for an old classic car or something like that. The two girls that he said that he would talk to because he liked to talk to people, he said he would ask their age and if they wanted to ride in his van, which who wouldn't. He claimed that he had not chased anyone, but if he did, it would just be in fun.
Right. Just good fun.
Just good fun chasing
Just good
young
chasing
girls,
people with my van fun.
underage girls around in my creep van. It's just fun.
Oh my God.
At that moment, another detective walked in, and Miller was not happy about the interruption. Larry, he said, why don't you tell him about your dreams?
Ooh,
Yeah, this is getting juicy.
what about it?
Hall was eerily silent and then said, sometimes I dream about killing young women,
Oh, do you now?
but I think it's just a dream.
He thinks.
He thinks.
He
That's
thinks.
a key word there. I
Yeah.
think it's just a dream. Wouldn't you just say, but it's just a dream? Not,
Yeah,
I
why
think
would you
it's
say,
just a
I
dream?
think it's just a dream?
Pretty sure I don't kill chicks.
Right.
Pretty
Although
sure.
my van has been strangely bloody lately.
And I do vacuum it a lot.
Yeah, I am really going through saw blades. I've noticed that.
Just can't keep lime in stock.
Right. I just let's go. All my shop rags are gone. They're all like smell like chlorophyll and stuff.
Yeah.
It's weird, man.
Hall claimed that during these dreams, he left his body and was looking down on himself. He said he couldn't really remember what he was doing, that it's just something bad. Miller showed Hall a picture of Jesse, and Hall flinched and looked away.
You think he's just trying to go for the insanity thing here? He's just trying to build a big case.
I think that triggered him right away when he saw that picture. It was, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
They're not just like prod me because they think I might be a suspect
Yeah.
in some missing.
They
like,
know some shit.
This is a girl I actually just killed.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
they're
okay,
putting her
I see
face
what
in
you're
front of me.
saying.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Okay. So you think
That,
he's,
and also I think he is one of those killers that does have guilt. I think
Yeah.
that's proven. Like
Do you think
even
he
in the
act-
way he killed these girls, supposedly, it just shows a guy who's not really into the killing act itself, but more he just
No
had to
one
have
can
them.
know.
Yeah, no one can know.
Yeah.
And he didn't like the rejection they would show him, and that's when he would lash out.
do you think he was blacking out, or do you think he?
I think it's possible with him.
Yeah,
I do.
I think so too. I think so too.
I think he had just had so much pent up
just don't-
sexual frustration. He had never been laid,
Right.
and like his brother was more successful, and he just had this sexual
Which
raging
didn't take
desire.
much.
Yeah, and then he would just
Okay. Yeah, I
he'd
think so
get
too.
rejected and then black out. And
Yeah.
So let's talk about his upbringing. Larry Hall, he was kind of he grew up in a cemetery. It was another interesting thing. Growing up, Larry Hall's father was the groundskeeper and sexton at a cemetery in Wabash, which I think is an interesting term for someone who works at a cemetery, like digging graves and stuff. A sexton, like
Really? Is that what they call him?
you know, really connect those two things, huh?
Is
Dead
that where
bodies and sex?
Is that where the like the last name comes from? Like a sexton is like an old last name.
Right.
I've heard it a lot.
I'm sure it is.
Wow.
I'm sure it's where it
Their
came from.
ancestors were graveyard attendants.
Yep.
Interesting.
So yeah, his father was a groundskeeper and sexton at a cemetery in Wabash. The family was allowed to live in a large house that overlooked the cemetery on the property and had nicer living quarters.
What a
than
view.
They were living high on the hog in this
Were they?
cemetery. They basically got to live in this mansion on a, the
Who else wants to live there?
only downfall is that when you look out your window, you see headstones, gravestones.
Yeah, just rolling grass and headstones that you can't use.
How much fun you could have though growing up, and you just
How much? You can't
you're
go
playing
out
hide
there.
and seek behind the tombstones,
Can't do that shit.
playing ghost in the graveyard in an actual graveyard. It's good times, man.
That's incredibly disrespectful.
I know, right?
My mom would like freak out, like what, like
They're dead. They
she'd
don't
be
know
like,
what
"Stay
that
on
is.
the path." And I used to say the same thing. I'd be like, "They're
What do they
they're
know?
6 feet down too. They can't even feel me." Like, what the hell? This grass has already grown back. This is not even.
If
What is
anything,
this?
I'm giving them company. Right?
Right.
They're bored. They're only hanging out with other dead people.
Right. Exactly. Jeez.
That didn't mean, however, that Larry grew up with an easy or charmed life. Larry and his twin brother Gary were born on December 11th, 1962. They share a birthday with Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue. Good
That's
company.
it.
Yeah. That's the only one I
Nice.
found notable. It was that and a bunch of YouTube stars. Fuck 'em.
Dude, freaking YouTube. Oh my
Right.
god.
At the time, his father Robert was 40 and his mother Bernice was 33. They were fairly old for at the time to be having children, and there were complications with the twins' birth. Larry was born blue and deprived of oxygen. It was determined later in their life that the twins had a rare transfusion syndrome unique to identical twins. The phenomenon arises when blood crosses from one baby to the other, and the first recipient doesn't give back as much blood.
Gary. So
So Gary was hogging all the
yeah,
blood.
Gary's hogging all the freaking blood.
Fucking blood hog.
Gary, you're hogging all the freaking blood.
Gary, can I have some blood back, please?
Give me some blood back or I'm gonna tell Grandma. God. So that's what Larry blamed it on.
Right. Blamed it on, or
always
possibly it did.
shortcomings.
Maybe it really did affect him.
I was born blue, how dare you?
I had no blood in my body. God. Duh.
How would you feel if you were born with no blood?
Yeah, this can cause twins who survive this syndrome to look much more like fraternal twins as they age. Gary grew up to be taller, slimmer, and more outgoing. Larry was pudgy and painfully shy. Gary was always in the lead, and Larry tagged along like a silent shadow. When the boys got in trouble growing up, Bernice refused to place any blame on them and always deflected it to someone else. So yeah, he grew up with basically a mom who
Just doted
she was
on him.
dramatic.
Yeah.
Doted on them. She never there was never any home cooked meals in the house.
No.
With not that would be her fault as much as just the household as a whole. His father
Right.
didn't cook, she didn't cook, and they just basically ate out every single day.
Right. So they didn't have the
And
best diet.
Not
for
the best
sure.
diet. They're growing up in a graveyard and they're getting into trouble, and always it's someone else's fault. Like
Right.
there was one story where one of the twins had broken a window with a rock.
Yeah, they were throwing rocks trying to get a friend's attention, and they broke one of the windows in his house.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so when the dad came to her house, the mom of the twins,
Yeah.
she says, well, your kid just what was it? Your kid just broke our window last week, so they were just returning the favor.
Well, not even that. She just said that he was throwing rocks at our house.
Oh, okay.
It's like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, no harm, no foul. Your kid broke my window.
Right. Yeah. There were some of the shit that they got into too was a little extreme. Like, if you've seen the movie The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin,
No.
they did some shit like from that movie where they got like a big dummy
Oh, to taunt the police?
to taunt the police. I mean,
Yeah.
in the Good Son, they throw it off a bridge onto the the freeway, and
Yeah.
people almost die. So it's a little more serious. But I think someone might have died. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. But yeah, they're taunting police with a fake dead body. They like put it in the street, and then when the
Yeah,
the
or they
police
put it in,
would
like,
get
a
all these
ditch.
police would get all these calls talking about, oh, there's a body in a ditch,
And then move it.
yeah, before the cops could get there.
And they
knew
knew the
it.
cops were on their way because they had a police scanner.
Right.
Which apparently everybody in that damn town had a police
I
scanner.
had a police scanner growing up. You didn't have one?
Yeah, yeah. I
My
had one
parents were
too.
really into that shit. That was like watching the show Cops for them. They just sit around, they'd have a beer on a
Yeah.
Friday night and
Dude,
listen
my
to the scanner.
dad is still huge into like ham radios and stuff, and he still does that. He'll like, hey son, check this out. This is the police station. I'm like, cool. Domestic disturbance. Over. I'm on it.
Yeah.
That's like all you hear.
Oh, God, there's so much blood.
Yeah, the guy's out on the porch. He's drunk. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and take him in.
It's John again.
All right. Yep. Yeah, we'll be right there.
John, come on. It's the third time this week.
Damn it, John.
Yeah. The twins were both really into cars, and in the early 80s in Wabash, one of the early things for the teens to do was cruise around the town. The cruising scene carried a lot of macho swagger, and both Gary and Larry were known to get into fights at these meetups. So it's kind of like a shitty version of Fast and Furious,
Yeah, their strip that they rode
the
was
inbred
like
version.
it was like a mile. They said it was like some gas station to a restaurant and then back or something. That's like,
Larry, as it turned out, was more of a force to be reckoned with than his brother Gary. You know? He's the angry inch, they used to call him.
right. Nice.
Yeah, he could actually hold his own in fights. Larry, he's known to be scrappy.
Right. But again, they're comparing them to each other. So it's like Gary is cool compared to Larry. Larry is a good fighter compared to Gary. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if there was a Jimmy Keene in this town.
There's a lot of yeah. There's a lot of outside details to these equations here that are getting thrown around.
In 1984, their father, Robert, was fired from the Falls Cemetery, and the family was forced to move into a one-bedroom shack. Gary refused to join the family and moved in with his girlfriend. Larry never
Yolanda.
Yolanda came into town on that bus.
Me and Yolanda already have an apartment together. I'm not coming with you guys.
I'm not living in that shack.
Where am I going to have sex in one bedroom? God.
Larry never liked the woman that Gary dated. He never liked Yolanda. She's taken away as Gary.
Right.
He thought that they took Gary's attention away from him. Gary got married in 1987, and the twins went on one last adventure before married life took hold for a while. They went on a road trip to the West Coast with another male friend, and they camped along the way. Also, at one point, picked up a woman. Now, this would be something that Gary would feel guilty for a long time because of what happened when they picked up this woman. He thinks that it may have kind of led to the things that Larry would later do.
Or maybe Larry was already doing them.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe he learned it from his good old brother.
Shit, maybe.
Years later, Gary confessed to police that they had taken advantage of the woman they picked up that night. in some way or another. Basically picked her up, and they all had their way with her. It's speculated, well, she's basically admitting to rape, isn't he?
It sounds like that to me, and
Right?
it sounded like that in the book.
It absolutely sounds like
When
that.
I heard that, I was like, dude, why are they not questioning this guy more?
Seriously.
He knows way more.
Yeah, and it later is highly talked about whether his brother was an accomplice on many of these
Right.
supposed murders. It's speculated that this may have been Gary's way to initiate Larry into sex, and later in life, Gary felt increasingly guilty about the incident and the impact that it may have had on his kin, or his twin, I mean. In 1988, Larry joined a local group of Civil War reenactors. For the first several years, Gary joined him, and they traveled to events together. Eventually, in 1992, Gary brought his girlfriend on a trip to Gettysburg. This drove a rift between the twins. Gary drifted away from reenactments and focused on his family after that, while Larry dove deeper into the reenactments.
That's all he has, dude. It's all he has at this point.
He got the mutton chops in an attempt to get moved to the
Yeah, he
higher
wanted to
into
be a
the ranks.
general,
Wanted to
but
be a
he's too short. Yeah, he wanted to play like he wanted to play freaking mutton chops, Burnside.
Right.
He wanted to play Burnsides, but he couldn't because he was too short.
Yeah.
Apparently Burnsides was like 6'1", which was tall then. It's like my height.
Right.
I need to go back there. Just walking around like a giant.
Be like the Abe Lincoln.
Right, yeah.
False God, Simon is. So let's go back to the interview. Larry Hall being questioned. After Miller initially questioned Hall, he had decided that he had had enough to move forward, and he brought into the U.S. Attorney's Office, who assigned Larry Beaumont to the case, the prosecutor we talked about. When Hall was brought in, he refused a polygraph, but eventually confessed to killing Jessica Roach. He explained how he had abducted her, what he did to her in his van, and how he murdered her.
He should have just took the damn polygraph. He'd have been way better off, right?
Right? Those things are so unreliable.
But denying a polygraph? That's
always
way worse.
It is.
way
I don't
worse.
know. Not worse than failing it, though.
I think so. I think it is. Because I feel like they can't use a
Especially at
polygraph in
this
court
time.
anyways.
In the 90s, early 90s, through the 80s, I feel like polygraphs had a lot more. They held a lot more weight.
But they still couldn't use them in court, though.
No, but still, it's like we saw it in the West Memphis 3 case, where it's like when the polygraph technician told the detectives like he's guilty. Remember?
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh, well, then let's press him harder because we know we've got this scumbag now." They
Right.
believe the results
Okay.
a lot of times. At least back then, they did. Quote from Larry Hall: "I just do things. I am not in control. This was one of those times when I was not in control." Speaking about Jessica Roach.
Right.
He had just as much to say about Trisha Reitler. This is the one they were after the whole time. They was a highly publicized case that they had no answer for. He had a lot to say about her and made vague comments about killing other girls. All of the girls looked alike. I cannot remember all of them. He later added, "I picked up girls in several other areas, but I can't remember which ones I hurt."
Yeah, he had a type. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
He definitely had a type.
In the
Usually
teens, dark brown hair,
Yeah.
long.
Right.
Miller set things in motion very quickly to get a warrant and executed and Hall arrested. He wanted to have control of this case as long as he could and did not want to leave Hall in Wabash because Wabash obviously had been defending Hall and saying he wasn't capable of this.
Right.
They had him
could
under
not
their
believe it.
They had him all along and they just refused to believe it. Like
Right.
there's so much shit pointing to this guy.
Yep.
Up until this point, Hall had been very cooperative. He waived extradition proceedings so that Miller could take him across state lines back to Illinois. Unfortunately for Miller, the Wabash County Police Chief held a press conference that evening before he and Hall were supposed to leave, suggesting that Hall was responsible for multiple crimes. And now they're like, "Oh, this guy's a serial killer.
Yeah.
He didn't kill this Jessica Roach girl all along." And then he confesses to one, and they're
He probably killed them all.
"Let's tell the whole town this guy's been killing women for years."
Yep. Explains a lot about him. Right. He was throwing rocks.
You know what? When I think about it, it made sense all along.
Right.
It's like they've been trying to fucking tell you.
Right. Exactly.
When Miller went to pick Hall up the next morning to take him back to Georgetown, there was a full-on media circus at the jail. On the ride back to Illinois, Miller could tell that Hall was aggravated and did not want to talk about the case any longer. Hall even mentioned that his brother had read the paper and told him that to keep his mouth shut and get a lawyer because he was in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. It sounds like Gary would know, huh? Mm-hmm. Oh, Gary.
You're going to get me in trouble too, Larry. You better keep your goddamn mouth shut.
Keep your mouth shut.
Miller had hoped to get additional details from Hall, but he decided not to provoke him any further, and they spent the ride chatting about the Civil and Revolutionary Wars. When they got back to Georgetown, at first Hall claimed that he did not confess to anything. He was just telling them about his dreams. He said that nothing he had mentioned in his statement actually happened.
Which really sucked because Hall would not talk for a tape recorder either.
Yes.
So they had nothing recorded. He would not talk in front of a camera.
Yeah.
He said he didn't want to hear his own voice. So everything that they got, they just had to like write down.
You just got to believe us.
You have to write it down.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oof.
And then he can recant it at any time because there's no recording.
Yeah. For the next 2 weeks, Hall went back and forth, admitting to the crimes and then recanting. Each time he recanted, he was more adamant that it was just a dream. He eventually asked for a polygraph test. Police searched Hall's room and his van. Both were filled with clutter, and in his bedroom, police found nothing of note. The back of his van, however, told a different story. Photos had been torn out of porn magazines and been marked and drawn to suggest mutilation, strangulation, and stabbing. Teeth were blacked out, and blood was drawn, dripping from their mouths. I'm sorry, this is not a normal hobby.
That's not normal.
That's just not something a
That's
normal
not
person
normal.
does. You know, like I get you.
Did you do that in your dream too there, Larry?
Yeah, people
Like,
can be
that's-
into like dark stuff, be into
Yeah.
macabre and all that, and like, you know, maybe you draw some weird shit, but like I feel like that's a really specifically serial killer thing, where you like take a picture of a pretty girl in a magazine and fucking bludgeon her face and it like draw like
Yeah, right.
it's just a strange thing to do. Man.
It does seem, it seems even stranger than if you came up with a picture of like something like out of a horror movie by yourself and drew the whole thing.
Yeah.
I feel like that's less dark than
Yeah.
taking someone who is alive, someone who exists
Yeah.
for like pleasure,
and-
and then you mutilate
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Yeah, there's just something darker about that to me.
it is. Yeah, for sure. On the bottom of one page was written Jessica, drawn to look like blood was dripping from the letters.
You know what? You know what just occurred to me? He probably was really wanting to take that polygraph test now, because if he really is blacking out, he can probably convince himself that it is a dream, and
yeah.
he can start to believe it. It's just kind of like memories. When you tell a memory a certain way, eventually you start to believe it.
Yep.
You know, whether it's true or not,
It's
or
not a lie if you believe it.
Exactly. And he could probably pass one.
Yeah.
He probably could.
Indiana maps were found marked with dots where both Jessica's body was found and also where police believed Hall had murdered her. Larry's parents and friends were interviewed. All were stunned by the events and vehemently denied he was capable of any kind of violence. Quote, "We think he's an awful nice boy and not capable of this. We brought him up the way he was supposed to be brought up, and he turned out right." That was from his dad. Mm-hmm. They're not violent. They're not no violent people. I never seen Larry with a rifle, a BB gun, or even a slingshot. If he went hunting, it was for old beer cans. Yeah, that was a hobby. His dad would take him around to collect,
Yeah.
and they would always collect the most beer cans.
Of course.
That's what they were known for.
Motivation, being poor.
Yeah. He always struck me as being very quiet, kind of backward. He always appeared shy, willing to help. I feel sad for his parents. Sounds like every serial killer, or at least half of them. So, a lot of them are extroverts and then introverts, but the ones that are introverts, that's what it sounds like.
Yep.
Always, very quiet, kind of a little strange.
Right.
Might have had bodies in the back of his van. Nice boy, though. A newspaper article that was published highlighted the connection between Larry and Trisha Reitler. Larry was stopped by police just 2 miles away from where Trisha had disappeared, almost a year to the day after her disappearance. And we know how serial killers like to revisit things
Oh, yep.
especially on anniversaries. Police searched his van and found paraphernalia related to her disappearance. They ultimately pursued a different suspect instead. And they stuck on that fucking suspect.
Oh my
even
God.
though he had like article clippings of her murder. He was found 2 miles away. He had a history of stalking girls. He had a fucking creep van. That's where you found this creepy shit. He's got mutton chops. What more do you need?
What more do you need?
He's got his name's Larry and his brother's Gary.
Right.
Fucking lock him up.
Just fucking lock this dude up. It's a crime.
All right. Back to present time in the story. This thing
Okay.
jumps around like a Tarantino film.
Yeah, it does.
Jimmy Keene goes to Springfield.
Okay.
When Jimmy Keene arrived at the prison in Springfield in August of 1998, the U.S. Marshals that brought him there reminded him not to even approach Hall for 6 months. They were playing the long game here. They didn't want him to scare Hall away. They're saying, dude, take your time and just play like you're just another inmate in there.
Right. But Jimmy wasn't feeling that because
Well-
his dad wasn't doing so hot, right?
Well, he finds that out later. But
Yeah.
like he goes in there with that intent, but it just he got kind of
He
deer in
can't
headlights.
fucking do it. He can't wait that long.
Yeah, this is
I
what the
couldn't.
FBI.
I couldn't either. I'd be like, I can talk to this
Well,
dude.
well, this is the chance of a lifetime, and he's been staring at Larry Hall's picture and reading his. He's in jail, and like all the people in the place with him are like looking over his shoulder, looking at this. Like, what are you looking at? He's staring at this profile of this serial killer and looking
Right.
at his background, his life, learning about these. Like, he knows so much about this guy, and Larry Hall has no idea he exists.
Right.
And so he's brought in to this prison during a shift change, and only the chief psychiatrist knew about this mission. And it was early in the morning when he thought he was brought in. And by the time he was processed and brought into a cell, it was time for breakfast. So he shuffles into this unruly crowd heading towards the cafeteria. And as he scanned for a place to sit, he spots Hall across the cafeteria. And we talked about he's studying this profile of him, staring at his picture, and there he seems like, holy fuck, that's the guy.
There he is. That was easy.
And he's just drawn to him like a magnet.
Yeah.
Adrenaline kicked in as he saw the man he had spent so much time talking about the last few weeks. He tried to remind himself that he needed to stay away from Hall for now. After breakfast, the inmates shuffled out to the cafeteria, and Jimmy followed the crowd and realized he had been subconsciously making his way towards Hall like a magnet, like I said. Before he could correct his path, he bumped right into him. And he's singing, fuck, what do I do now? I didn't plan for this shit. Jimmy had been at Springfield for only a few hours and had already derailed the plan carefully laid out by Beaumont and the FBI. He had to recover quickly, and Jimmy Keen's a badass, man. He knows what to do when faced with a problem head first. Hey, excuse me, man, he said. You look cool. Do you know where I can find the prison library? And Larry Hall thinking, no one's ever said I'm cool before. This just completely threw Larry Hall for a loop. Hall was startled for a second time, and Jimmy told him where it was, slurring his words enough to make Jimmy think he was medicated. Hall then asked, you think I'm cool? Hell yeah, Jimmy said. Look at the other guys around you.
Yeah, in comparison. just like your brother. Your whole life.
Later that day, Jimmy met with the chief psychiatrist, and behind closed doors, they again went over the plan. He would be in a cell directly across from Hall. His diagnosis was depression, and they claimed that his allergies interfered with his meds, which was why he needed to be under the care of a chief psychiatrist.
Right.
So we talked about this Springfield prison. The United States Medical Center for Federal Prisoners is a United States federal prison in Springfield, Missouri, which provides medical, mental health, and dental services to male offenders. It is operated by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, a division of the DOJ. So it's not your normal prison. It's more for the rehabilitation. So like he wouldn't get in there for drug charges. That's why they had to cop up this whole depression thing. A lot of prisoners would be taken from a normal prison to there to heal up for different things they have going on, whether it was like an actual physical issue or mental issue.
Right. And he also went in under the guise of being a weapons runner too, because it had to be a federal crime.
It had to be a federal crime as a federal prison, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. After several days of showing up at the library at the same time as Hall, Jimmy was invited to have breakfast with him. Hall and his friends were known as the baby killers, and it was a stigma for any other prisoner to sit with them. Yeah, I can see why. You know, if that's your guys' moniker, oh, the baby killers over there.
Yeah, they're basically a group of serial killers that he hung out with.
Like pedophile, creep, fucking serial killers, yeah. Jimmy found the rest of the group to be very odd, you think? And most heavily medicated. He began eating with them every morning. The more he had breakfast with Hall, the more... I don't see how they're not, like, looking at this and like, what are you hanging out with us for?
Yeah, why are you here?
Like, you got all these dudes over here. You're like a cool, like... fucking badass, fucking movie star looking guy, and you're hanging out with the baby killers.
Right. It's like LeBron James going like to a high school and just like walking in there and just trying out for the basketball team.
Right.
You guys look cool.
The more they had breakfast with Hall, the more Larry opened up to Jimmy. He started frequently compare Jimmy to his twin brother Gary, which he looked up to. After several weeks of having breakfast with the baby killers, a couple of mob goons cornered Jimmy in a hallway. They explained that their boss wanted a word with Jimmy. Vincent Gigante walked right up to Jimmy and poked him in the chest and asked why Jimmy was having breakfast with the baby killers. Jimmy feigned ignorance, pretending he knew nothing about them. Gigante suggested he cease and desist unless he wanted a knife in his back. From now on, Vincent Gigante expected Jimmy to eat with him.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so he's like, motherfucker, dude, I'm working on something here. He's like giving a wink like, bro, I'm going to get this motherfucker.
Right.
Jimmy now spent his mornings eating with Gigante's crew. Then after breakfast, because they both had medical exemptions from working, Gigante expected Jimmy to play bocce with him outside, regardless of the temperature. So now between the different prisons and hanging out with different mob bosses, this dude's got to be just becoming an ace at all these games that require no movement.
Oh, yeah.
He's not playing basketball with the athletic guys.
Yeah.
He's playing bocce with the old fucking mobster bosses.
He was probably bored out of his mind.
Right. Fuck. This is the only game I'll get beat at in this whole prison. I have to fucking play it every day.
He probably sucked at it.
Right?
That's why he didn't say nothing.
He's just whacking the ball across the whole fucking place on accident. God damn it.
I think you have to like throw it.
I thought this is the one where you have like the little fucking club and you smack the thing between the little.
Oh no, that's
metal-
croquet.
Oh, I'm thinking of croquet.
Yeah, that's
what the hell's
croquet.
bocce?
Bocce ball is like, I think, where everybody has like their own colored balls, and like you have to throw them in a circle, and then you have to knock other people's balls out of the
Throw 'em?
circle or
Do you
something.
like roll them like a bowling ball? What do you do? I'm gonna YouTube bocce.
Yeah, YouTube that right quick. I've only played it like once or twice. Usually it was at the beach.
Okay.
And
Play
it's-
bocce at the beach.
Yeah,
Sounds like a bad song.
bocce at the beach.
Bocce ball. Let's see. Okay, there's definitely different colored balls on grass.
Yeah, you have to play on a surface where they can't roll really good, I think. Because I think you kind of toss it underhand and you try to just knock their ball out, and then whoever has the most balls in the circle.
Okay, there's
think you
looks like a
win.
cue ball. There's like a small little white ball, and then there's big colored balls. Yeah, this guy's rolling it like a bowling ball.
Okay.
And it looks like you try to smack the other guy's balls off. I don't know. This
Yeah, I
looks-
kind of know. I don't fucking know. Who play? Just play cornhole.
I could get into it.
What is this?
I could get into it. This looks more strategic than cornhole. It's like cornhole
think?
is just like fucking throw the thing into the hole. There's no strategy.
Yeah.
I love billiards. This looks like
Yeah.
billiards on grass with bowling mixed in, which I love bowling too. So I'm going to play bocce someday. I'm sure that's my
Okay.
future.
Well, you get you a bocce ball set and we'll play.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's spending his mornings eating with Gigante's crew. Then after breakfast, they would play bocce outside, regardless of the temperature. However, on the days that it rained, they sat inside and watched Jerry Springer. Of course, that's what else. What else are you doing in the '90s?
Right.
You're watching fucking Jerry Springer during the day.
Exactly.
Especially if you call into work or you're off, school sick that day. You're watching Jerry. You know.
Yeah,
it.
I can just see a bunch
Jerry,
of prisoners in their
Jerry.
jumpsuits.
Jerry. Yeah. Beat that bitch's ass.
Fucking banging lunch trays on the tables and shit. I don't know.
Jerry's the man.
Right.
2 months after his stay in Springfield, Jimmy was now trying to find new ways to interact with Hall. He would have a brief second breakfast with the baby killers every day, but Hall had been put out by the fact that he stopped sitting with them in the first place. One day after his second daily breakfast, Larry invited Jimmy to watch America's Most Wanted in the TV room with his friends on Saturday nights. This is his in, man.
Yep.
This is it. I get some alone time. Not alone, but I can get
Right.
next to him and sit there for a good hour at least to watch this show. The second week, Jimmy joined them. So the first week he goes and he finds that Larry's just fixated on this show. He's so obsessed that he's not going to get any. He's not going to be able to say anything. He's just going to interrupt Larry and piss him off while he's watching America's Most Wanted.
Right.
He's into this shit. He's a true crime fan.
Of course.
He's a serial killer himself, man.
Right.
Who knows more about this shit?
He's in.
He's hoping to see himself on this fucking show, which he probably did half the time.
Right.
This missing girl was one that he was responsible for on
Oh, wow.
every other episode, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe.
The second week, Jimmy joined them to watch. The topic of the show was serial killers.
Oh, perfect.
Larry's mind raced the entire episode to figure out how he could use the subject matter to get Hall to open up.
Jimmy's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. His moment came towards the end of the episode. The victim's parents pleaded for the killer to give up the location of their daughter's body, and Jimmy made his move. If I was the guy that killed them girls, I'd just tell everybody where I left them.
Subtle.
Right?
Subtle, Jimmy.
I'd like it. That's the way I'd go, too.
Yeah.
Hall said, "You would?" His eyes wide. "Why not give the family some kind of closure?" Jimmy said. "It's not like I'm ever getting out of prison." Jimmy then remembered the cross in Hall's cell and added an emphasis. "At least this way I'd find some kind of peace with God and try to redeem myself." Hall simply nodded and turned back to the screen. The next Saturday, another prisoner came into the room and turned off the TV. Hall was visibly upset, and once again, Jimmy saw an opportunity. Hall kind of like, under his breath, was like, "I was watching that." This big-ass, scary fucking prisoner came in and turned the TV up. "I was watching that. Hey." So Jimmy sees this as an opportunity, so he ran with it. Jimmy got up and turned the TV back on, face to face with this guy, who turned it back off and said, "Don't touch that shit." Again. Jimmy then turned it on again. They got into a scrap. Jimmy kicks his ass, basically socked him in the face, dropped the seat. Jimmy was immediately taken into the hole, and he spent the night wondering if he had made a big mistake. Fortunately, Jimmy ended up getting out the next day and avoiding an assault charge being added to his time because the baby killers all stuck up for him and said that it was the other dude that started it.
Yep.
For his troubles, the next Saturday night, Hall invited Jimmy back to his cell after the TV show. Now, that's a big moment when your prison friend invites you back to their cell, man. That's like
I think
when a
so.
girl invites
Yeah.
you back to her apartment or something.
Right. You're really on the end now.
You're going to see what that 5x9 is like.
Come back to my cell and like Netflix and chill or something. I got mood lighting
America's Most Wanted and Chill.
and Hulk sculptures. Or was it falcons?
Falcons.
I think
Falcon,
he liked falcons.
wooden falcons for days.
Yeah, I got wooden falcons for days. I whittled them.
Out of beechwood. Jimmy tried several different tactics to get Hall to open up when they were chatting. He eventually discovered that bashing women would get Larry to chime in the most. It took several conversations, but eventually Larry added in his 2 cents about how badly women had treated him. And he did this in his dimly lighted cell, which Jimmy Keene thought was a nice touch. He was like, dude, my cell is like a damn hospital. It's so
funny.
bright.
It's
He
funny
added
the
in a
shit
nice-
you envy in prison, right?
He really dug Larry's fucking cell. He's like, dude, this guy figured this shit out. He's got everything organized. He's got dim lighting, which is nice, and it feels like
Right.
home.
Yeah.
It's like home in there.
I could see if it was too bright, that would be annoying.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to
Super
get this guy
bright.
to confess to some dark shit.
Probably
you want
got,
that
like-
nice lighting.
Yeah, probably a bunch of the lights are buzzing and shit.
Yeah.
Ugh, that would
You don't want
be
those bright, sobering lights when you're trying to look over your dark past of killing women.
Right. Yeah, you gotta tone it down a bit.
Yeah. He had to do it in Larry Hall's nice dim cell.
Right.
Finally, Jimmy had found common, although contrived ground. Hall continued to refuse to admit why he was actually in prison. He claimed he was a weapons runner, which matched up with the cover story about why Jimmy was in there. Jimmy got into yet another fight and narrowly escaped another assault charge. That was with the ABC crew, right? Remember that story in the book?
Yeah.
This
It was B, C, and the other letter. It was 3 guys that went by letters.
Yeah,
It
there was a
B,
gang.
C, and like L. It was like one of them was like way off.
There was a gang running in Springfield at the time that was
Yeah.
the ABC crew, and they all had just a letter. That was their name.
Yeah.
And 3 of the letters, he had insulted one of the letters. Mm-hmm. They came up to him.
On accident, like B.
Yeah.
Like B. He had like a stutter or something.
Yeah, the guy came up to and asked Jimmy something, and Jimmy giggled because of what he had said, but not
Yeah.
because he stuttered, but the guy
Yeah.
took it that way.
I remember it. So B and C and L were having a conversation about what weighs more, muscle or fat, because they're all like muscle heads.
Meatheads,
Like they're all So they go up and they ask Jimmy. Well, B does, and he has a stutter. So I'm guessing he stutters while he's asking him, and Jimmy's like, muscle, of course. You know, he's like laughing, but B thought he was laughing at his stutter,
Right. And so later in Jimmy's cell,
and he embarrassed him in front of his friends too. Because the other 2 started laughing at him, like, "Oh, I told you," like whatever.
right.
Supposedly,
it was a dumb question, bro.
it was a stupid question.
Everyone knows muscle weighs more.
right?
And you're about to find out in my cell, motherfucker.
Ho-ho!
Because B showed up in Jimmy's cell,
Yeah.
and the other 2, whatever, C and E or whatever,
Yeah.
were standing by the door. Jimmy proceeds to fucking double leg him and slam him on the bed, starts kicking the shit out of this dude. And the other 2 come in, and Jimmy starts kicking the shit out of one of them, and then the other one
Yep.
turns and runs. Jimmy chases him down, right? Kicks
Yep.
his ass, fucks them all up.
Yep.
He ends up in trouble for that one again.
Yeah, that fight like spills out like in front of the cells, so like everybody sees this shit, but
Right.
they still don't. Nobody rats on each other, obviously.
Right. He narrowly escaped an assault charge for that one. He saw how the guards had looked at him. Now that he had a reputation for assault, he knew it would put him in more danger after this. So they pretty much didn't give him the assault charge because they could see that he was outnumbered. Like
And
3 dudes are hurting him, and like they're all
and those
part of a
3
gang
guys
together.
had a history of attacking people too.
Oh, yeah.
those guys had a bad rep.
Yeah. One morning, Jimmy's old cellmate from Chicago showed up at Springfield and greeted Jimmy loudly at breakfast. This is his worst nightmare in this scenario. This guy who actually knows him from the past
identity
shows up
thief
and calls
guy.
him out. Yeah.
Yeah, computer hacker.
In front of all the mob guys that Jimmy's hanging out with, Gigante's crew, he asked Jimmy about how hey, Jimmy, what's going on? I didn't expect you to see you here. How's that big drug case going? Jimmy's what the fuck is the matter with you?
Just gives him a quick throat chop.
Dude dies right there on the spot. This got the attention of all the mobsters at the table. As far as they knew, Jimmy was in for weapons running, and if he lied about that, for all they knew, he was in there to inform on them. Jimmy was concerned this would put a target on his back, and feeling increased pressure, Jimmy knew he had to push Larry more to try and get a quicker confession to get the fuck out of here because things are going awry.
Yeah. What do you think about this? Because the mob never really gets suspicious from what they say, other than the book described the mob gave him a few like strange looks.
Asked him
But
about
that's all,
it, and
it's-
he just made some excuse.
Yeah, and then they just let it go. That doesn't sound like the mob to me.
Well, they might have been slowly plotting against him. You know, like they're not.
or maybe
not
they're
the type
just like-
to just kill on the spot. They'll get him later.
Yeah, or maybe they're just thinking about it. Maybe they're investigating it more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
becoming closer friends so they can find out more. By November of 1988, Jimmy had been in Springfield for 4 months. He knew that he had to make his move soon. And he gets a call from he tried to call his dad, and he couldn't get through to him, so he called the girl that was dating his dad at the time, and she told him that his dad had a stroke, and that he was too embarrassed to tell him until he recovered.
Right.
And his dad comes and visited him, and he really didn't look good. Like half his face was drooping, and
Right.
it
Slurred
looked like he may not
speech.
have a whole lot of time left.
Right.
And so this pushes him as well further to try and get this.
Yeah, that sped things
confession.
up a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One night while they were talking in Hall's cell, Jimmy decided to press for the truth. He looked right at Hall and said, "Haven't we been hanging around each other long enough to tell each other the truth?" "What do you mean?" Hall said. Because Hall's case made such big local splash, Jimmy was able to indicate that he knew who Larry really was without giving away his cover. Anyone who had lived in that surrounding area would have heard of Larry Hall because of his ties to all these missing women.
And Jimmy also said that his mom was from that hometown where
Yeah.
Jessica Roach was abducted. So she was calling him, and he supposedly was telling her about a new friend that he met in prison. That was like his whole spiel. Obviously, none of this happened, but that's how he got over on Larry with that one, which I thought was a pretty good alibi.
Yeah, he explained that he knew who Hall was, and he knew that Hall was the one accused of killing those girls. Larry insisted that it wasn't what it appeared to be. Jimmy explained to Larry that he didn't care what he had done, that they were all criminals, but he thought that by now they were good enough friends that Larry would have leveled with him.
Oh, guilt trip him.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like, dude, I don't care if you killed little kids. Like,
Yeah,
I just
come
thought we
on,
were
man.
bros, and like you would tell me these kind of things.
I told you stuff.
God, this has got to be so tough to say, like, to try and be nice to this fuck, and like try and
yeah.
act like you're cool with the shit that he did for even.
Oh man, I know it
drove
book-
him crazy.
The book talked about how he felt guilty and stuff, and he said that he did. I feel like that's an understatement.
Right.
I was trying to put myself in his shoes and just imagine a serial killer is describing in detail what he does to a girl, and you just have to be.
You have to sit there and be like, I understand why you do that, bro.
Yeah.
She like fucking totally turned you down.
Well, yeah,
Women,
totally,
man,
totally
fuck
in
'em,
the
right?
Oh God, just imagine.
That's the way he had to
having
act with him.
Yeah.
The next day, Jimmy went about his day, business as usual, and he could tell that Hall was relieved. It was obvious to him that Hall was more worried about Jimmy stopping talking to him than he was telling him about his crime. Jimmy decided to press his luck further, and the next night he asked about Jessica Roach. Hall explained it wasn't like everyone said, that he had met Jessie, but what happened was a different story. He talked about Jessie like she had been a neighbor that lived down the street or someone he had known for a long time, someone that he could see himself with. Still, the conversation stayed at the surface level and dove nowhere near murder. Jimmy decided that he had to take his girl bashing to the next level. Jimmy brought up an old girlfriend and how mad she had made him and how I could fucking kill her with my bare hands. You know what this reminds me of? Is Mindhunter. You know how he the one younger guy, the younger investigator, the FBI agent has to like level with these guys and act like he's just as sick as them, and that's what gets him to crack.
Yeah, and then he walks out of there and he's like, whew, he's like
Drives everyone
shaking it
else-
off. He's
yeah.
like having a breakdown.
Makes everyone else sick when he does it.
Yeah.
Hall nodded empathetically, and Jimmy could see that he had finally pushed far enough to open the door and get him to talk about what happened with Jessie Roach. He claims that Jessie had wanted to talk to him. Not that he had snatched her up, like the media had said, but that she wanted to talk to him. He saw her walking with her bike, and when they started talking, and he opened up his van to show her the bike that he had inside. I got a bike too. Hall insisted that she wanted to get in the van, and she was happy to be there until he had tried to kiss her. Then she wanted to get out.
Right.
And this is usually where it would go wrong with Larry Hall, is when you rejected him.
But why do you want to get out?
Right.
Yeah, it's so creepy. Like the
Supposedly-
way he describes it.
Supposedly, there was another girl who the police had talked to later that said that she woke to him a guy that was supposedly him. She woke to him at the foot of her bed, and she didn't freak out, and like she played it cool and acted like, we can hang out, we can go out tomorrow. My kids, I'm gonna drop them off at this time. We can go out tomorrow night or whatever.
Yeah.
And he left, and she gave him, like, he went in for a kiss, and she let him kiss her.
Oh.
And then he left.
Yeah.
And then she went to the fucking police the next morning or that night or whatever and told them about this run-in she had with this guy.
Oh wow, I don't remember that.
This isn't a different interview that I heard with a guy that wrote a
okay.
different book about this
Interesting.
case.
Okay.
Actually, the book, it's called Urges, A Chronicle of Serial Killer Larry Hall, written by Christopher Hawley Martin. And I heard an interview he did on a different show.
Okay.
So yeah, and he actually gained a relationship with Larry Hall later on and tried to get confessions out of him and
Right.
established a relationship with him and wrote a book on him. And so, yeah, that was one of the stories that he had told about someone who narrowly escaped Larry Hall's. And if you didn't reject him, if you played along just long enough to get away,
Yeah.
that was usually what set him off, is the rejection. He just couldn't handle it.
Yep.
So he tries to kiss this girl in the van, Jessie Roach. And when she rejects him and tried to get out, he had a rag ready with chloroform. It's always a good backup plan, right?
Right.
He made this chloroform rag supposedly from starter fluid. It wasn't actual chloroform. However, it does have similar effect.
Yep.
Starter fluid was an item commonly found on notes and lists police found in his van from his room.
And it's also great for jumpstarting old carburetors too.
Yeah.
So
So-
it makes sense with his hobbies.
Hall told Jimmy that if he didn't put the rag on her face, that she would have kept hitting me, or you could just let her go. You know,
Yeah.
it's already bad enough. You picked up this young girl and tried to kiss
Yeah.
her.
She's not trying to assault you. She
You
just
could
wants to get
still
away.
get out of this without too much trouble if you just let her leave, get on her
Yeah.
bike and ride away.
But then he won't get laid, Lauren. You forgot about that. It's kind of a main piece to the puzzle here.
It's fucked up. Yeah, so he said that if he didn't put the rag on her face, she'd keep hitting me. He then bound her up in the back of the van and drove around until he found a secluded area where he could park and get in the back of the van with her. Jimmy asked Hall if he had sex with her, and he claimed that he had a blackout and it felt like a dream, but he woke and both of their clothes were off, so I think we had sex together. Pretty sure it was one-sided, Larry. Don't think she was a partner in that.
No.
Eventually, he marched Jessie out. When it starts with chloroform, no one,
Yeah.
it's not
I don't think that's
consensual.
the same as consent.
Not
No, I don't think so.
consensual.
No.
Eventually, he marched Jessie out of the van and forced her to sit with her back to a tree. He took 2 leather belts and interlocked them. He put the belts around her neck and stood behind the tree so he wouldn't have to face her. As if you couldn't think he'd be even more of a coward.
Right.
Even the way he
Because-
kills is just pathetic.
Because once he has that release, he goes back to being bitch Larry.
Yeah.
He's a nobody again. He doesn't have that rage. He doesn't have that, I don't know, for lack of a better term, that hormone monster pushing him anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
So,
He killed her by putting the belts around her neck and stood behind the tree so he wouldn't have to face her. He put the stick in the belts and twisted it like it was a tourniquet until she stopped moving. Very
you know, he
John Wayne
studied.
Gacy-esque.
I was about to say he studied serial killers.
Yes, he did.
And I'm willing to bet money he studied John Gacy.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He had to have.
Yeah. A lot of killers have used that method, the tourniquet type thing with the
Yeah, but
twist a stick.
really? The stick, though? I feel like that was more.
I mean, Gacy
Gacy.
definitely did it. He's the bigger name that did it.
Right.
At the end of the story, Jimmy shrugged his shoulders and said, "Well, I guess you had to do what you had to do." But inside, Hall's depravity had him reeling, and he left the cell as soon as he could. Probably just blood boiling. Like,
Oh, my
I just want
God.
to smash his face.
Especially with the skills that Jimmy has. You know, he's like, I could fucking kill this dude.
I can think of 50 different ways I could kill you right now. With my pinky is one.
Roundhouse. Roadhouse.
Pinky through the nose to the brain.
Oh, God. Right.
Jimmy waited several days before asking about Trisha Reitler. Hall assured him, now this is the golden goose. If he gets him to admit to Trisha Reitler and give the location on the body, he's out of here.
He's out.
So he's already pretty much got a detailed confession on the woman that he's locked up for, and he's already got an appeal for. But he's got to get Trisha Reitler, man. That's the big one.
Right.
Hall assured him that once again, it didn't happen the way they had said. Jimmy let the conversation die there and acted almost disinterested to put Hall at ease. The following night, Hall brought up Reitler all on his own. Hall claimed that Reitler had her clothes on when she entered his van, and he made it sound like she had entered the van willingly. But he did admit that he had a knife at the time. When he tried to kiss her, she went crazy, hitting him, punching him, and trying very hard to get out of the van. Hall was surprised how much of a fight she put up because none of the girls had ever fought him like that. He started choking her to make her stop. He claimed to have blacked out again, waking up next to her naked body and finding that she was dead. Hall told Jimmy that at this point he panicked. He gathered up her clothes and put her things in a park under a tree. He then drove straight home and went inside to collect his thoughts. Quote, I realized I had done it again. I was really panicky trying to figure out what to do next, pacing back and forth. Hall ended up burying her body way out in the country. Again, this story made Jimmy very uneasy and excused himself, claiming he was tired.
Yeah. it's
So
kinda
he's
hard to go
thinking,
along
I
with all
got
that,
this,
man.
though. Like, I got it. I got him to confess to this one.
Yeah.
That's what I needed to do, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, like, where he said the body was, it's not going to be easy to find out in the middle of the fucking...
Right.
He buried it, first of all, and it's out in the woods.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah. Jimmy had the confession, but now he had to get the location of the body. He was concerned that because Hall took her into the woods, it would be very hard to get the exact landmarks to find the location. For the next 2 nights, Jimmy tried to... And how do you get, like, exact coordinates to where this body is without sounding really suspicious to Hall, too? It's like,
Right.
tell me again, it was next to the rock that looked like, it had, like,
Right.
a stick that was with a fork on the top. Like,
Now, would you say it's 132.72
Yeah.
north and 75.62 south? No, it's west.
it just really helps
mean-
me to paint the picture
Yeah,
of this memory.
right. Here's a map. If you could draw an X anywhere, where
Yeah. Jimmy began to feel very antsy. His freedom felt so close and yet so far away. He had to get the location of the body from Larry. Jimmy circled back to thoughts that he had when he first got to Springfield, that he could simply overpower Hall, beat the answer out of him. He got so worked up that he stormed into Hall's cell, but he found it empty. Jimmy stalked the arts and crafts area where he knew that he could find Larry. There he was, in the wood shop area. Jimmy was not allowed to enter, however. Just then, there wasn't a guard at the door, so Jimmy went in anyway. Once inside, he saw the falcon figure that he had previously observed Hall working on. So Hall liked to carve these wooden falcons.
yeah,
But as he got closer, he realized there wasn't just one, but 10 to 12 falcons, all exactly alike. Getting closer, still, he saw the falcons were lined up on a piece of paper that ended up being a map of Illinois and Indiana, marked with several red dots. Jimmy announced himself to Hall and was startled to see that he was in the workshop somewhere he wasn't allowed to be. Jimmy asked about, he pretty much like fell backwards onto the map, like trying to cover it, and obviously something important is going on here.
right.
Jimmy asked about what he was working on, and Hall quickly folded up the map. Jimmy asked about the falcons, and Hall explained that he was sending them to his brother. And he said, "Do you know what they're for, James?" Jimmy shook his head. "They watch over the dead." Jimmy was convinced the red marks on the maps were all places that Hall had buried a body, and that he was going to have his brother go out there and put these falcons there to watch over them.
Yeah, probably.
That's dark shit, man.
That is.
It's dark shit.
That's exactly what he was going to do.
It's just so sick that he did these heinous acts to them, ended their lives so young, and then he feels like he's responsible for making sure that they get watched over. Like he still cares. Like, fuck you
Yeah.
and your fucking
Oh, I
wooden
see.
falcon.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's almost like he's doing
Like
them
he's a
solid
good guy
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you know what? I did
I'll
murder
protect-
you and rape you, but I'm gonna
I'll
send you a
protect
wooden
your
falcon.
I'll protect your rotting body with this falcon.
Right.
Yeah. Perfect.
Jimmy got out of there as quickly as he could and called the emergency number given to him by his girlfriend, the FBI agent. Jimmy wanted them to get possession of the map before Hall got it into the mail to his brother. Now, what I'm thinking is like, okay, you talk this to me. If there's any question I have to like the truth of his story, it's like how he didn't just snatch that fucking map and beat his ass right there. Like, I've got it. I've got the fucking map with the dots.
Yeah.
This will
Well,
take you to the bodies.
because then the guards come and get you, and this is like what, his third or fourth fight, and they're going to
guess.
take everything he has.
Yeah. Yeah, because the guards don't know about his story.
Nope, the guards don't know.
And you just look psycho. Like, there was a moment in the hole where he was saying he told the guard he was so pissed he's been locked in the hole, and
Yeah.
like the people that he reports to didn't know he was in the hole, so that he was just stuck there.
Yeah.
And he's trying to tell the guards,
And the
I'm
psychiatrist-
undercover. I'm working for.
And the one person that knew in the prison, the psychiatrist, was on vacation
Yeah.
because, Jimmy was told not to approach for 6 months.
Yep. And so he's trying to tell this guard that's outside the door of the hole, and he's trying to tell him like, dude, I'm on a secret fucking mission.
Yeah. And the
to
guard's
catch
like,
this serial
shut the
killer."
fuck
It's
up.
like, I hear this shit every day, dude.
Right, a secret mission.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, secret mission, man. Cool. Yeah, so I get what you're saying there. Yeah, the guards don't know, and if he does beat this guy up,
Yeah.
they're going to take the map, and they're not
Yep.
going to know what it is. They're not going to give a shit, and he's
Right.
going to
They're
get
probably
thrown
just
in the
going to
hole.
trash it, and then he's going to be in the hole. Yep.
Right. Or they're going to give it back to Larry, and he's going to burn it or whatever.
Yep.
So yeah, he freaks out. He's like, I got it, dude. I've got the fucking. He's got a map. If they can just get a hold of it, I'll let him know. Then Hall did something before he left Springfield that he regrets to this day. So he called and he left a voicemail to to Beaumont
Yeah.
and his people saying, I've got him. He's got a map. You got to get down here. And that night before he, was going to get out, he just couldn't hold it anymore. He had to give Larry Hall a piece of his mind. He stormed over to Hall's cell And he went off on him, basically.
Yep.
He told Hall that what he did was some rotten shit and that he didn't know how he could live with himself. Hall was immediately terrified and kept repeating, Beaumont sent you, didn't he? Beaumont sent you.
Yeah,
Hall figured it out like, fuck, I knew this was all too good to be true. This cool guy wouldn't hang out with me.
Right.
Jimmy claimed that he had no idea who Beaumont was and left, but the damage was done. The next morning, Hall's psychiatrist was in Jimmy's cell to accost him. She wanted to know why Jimmy was asking so many questions about Hall's case and who had sent him in undercover. Jimmy got dragged out of bed and thrown straight into the hole. This is what we were talking about. With a few days into the hole, no one tried to contact Jim. He was thinking, okay, he got thrown in the hole. He's like, all right, I'll be in here a few hours before they show up and I get out of here and I'm done.
Yeah.
Days turned into weeks, and he feared that he would get lost in the system and that he was just a crazy man. He's like shitting in the corner of this room, crazy hair, his beard's all grown out because he hasn't been allowed to shave.
Right.
Jimmy's eventually got a message to the chief psychiatrist who had been on vacation. Bad time to be on vacation, right? When he cracks the case, and Jimmy gets the map and everything. He had all but threatened to expose the doctor to the rest of the prison for collaborating with the FBI. He demanded to see Janice Butkus, the FBI agent who he reported to. The message did get passed along, and Janice finally showed up. She quickly scooped Jimmy up and walked him right out of Springfield. In a flash, he was on a plane back to Chicago. But Jimmy was worried that he actually didn't get the location of Tricia Reitler's body because he didn't know what happened with that map after he left. He'd hoped that they would get there by morning and that the map would still be in the shop and it would all be good because he didn't think that Hall would be able to get back to the shop until the next morning, be a lockdown or whatever. And as long as they got there before him, but it'd been weeks he'd been thrown in the hole. Who knows what's going on with his map? Obviously, he's alerted Hall to the fact that he was undercover, so this thing could all just be for naught. Because he had to go in there and give Hall a piece of his fucking mind.
Yep.
He had to do that. And like the story says, he's kicking himself to this day for that. Even though it all worked out in the end for Jimmy Keene, they still could have gotten closure to all these families.
Yep. But Jimmy Keene didn't really care about that. Let's be honest.
You don't think?
Nah, he didn't give a fuck. He just wanted to get out.
Yeah.
Cared about himself and
that
his
was
dad.
definitely the number one priority.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to get closure for
I mean, he cared about his dad, I think. I do think he wanted to be out and he wanted to be there for him. I don't think it's entirely a selfish thing, but I don't think Jimmy cared about the rest of that stuff.
So Jimmy's plane lands in Chicago, and just like that, he was back in jail again. Eventually, Jimmy was shuffled over to the courthouse and ended up in Larry Beaumont's office. Beaumont wanted him to take a lie detector test to prove that what he said about the map was true. The test was nerve-wracking, but Jimmy passed. Both Jimmy and Beaumont were thrilled because Beaumont was a huge component of the lie detector test, the polygraph test. He was all about it. He had used it in cases in the past.
Well, he developed a special type of polygraph test or something. He had one that he modified or something.
He was Mr. Polygraph.
Yeah, he knew that if you were telling if it said you were telling the truth, you were definitely telling the truth. There was no way it would confuse a truth with a lie.
Right.
But if you were lying, you could be telling the truth and be nervous. But if it said you were telling the truth, that was the shit.
Right.
Apparently, it was like 100%.
That was at least his belief. It doesn't hold up in court. Now we see.
But Beaumont was a pretty smart dude. Like I think if he was this convinced in this specific polygraph, I think it probably was.
Yeah.
He seemed like he had his shit together.
And so even though Jimmy Keene didn't get the location of Tricia Reitler's body, on February 23rd, 1999, Beaumont filed a motion to have Jimmy's sentence reduced. The motion to reduce Jimmy's sentence to time served went before a judge and was granted. So did he even spend a full year, like between the initial prison he went to and then getting transferred?
He may have. Counting the time in the hole and all that. Maybe he did.
Not bad considering he had a 10-year sentence without parole.
And he did at least 10 at the first prison. So,
10 months,
he probably did a year.
Yeah. Rough. I mean, he put himself at a big risk going to Springfield. So that's something they took into consideration.
Right.
The ultimate outcome of the case, as far as Beaumont and Jimmy were concerned, was that they did not find Tricia's body. Beaumont reiterated that he had told Jimmy, unless we find the body, he ain't getting jack for it. Once Jimmy passed the polygraph, however, Beaumont realized how much information he had and what he had been through. Beaumont thought it was the right thing to do to continue with Jimmy's release.
Yeah.
So he got released. He bounced around the
prison. So that's
prison.
what I'm saying. The polygraph said that Jimmy told the truth on everything he said. So Beaumont took that as gospel because he's like, well, this lie detector is 100% on telling the truth.
Right.
So that's why I think that held a lot of weight. If Jimmy denies the polygraph test, I think maybe he gets a reduced sentence, but I don't think he gets out.
And I mean, some of the details that Larry Hall had told him, like about the belt and strangling, it fit the crime as well, and it made sense. So
And the Falcons and the map.
and like, how could Jimmy have
oh
known
my
that?
God.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Falcons. And the
Yeah,
map.
how would he know that stuff about the Falcons? That'd be such a weird thing to make up. That he carved small wooden Falcon figurines. Like, yeah.
Jimmy bounced around the prison system for a few months while he waited for an official meeting with his probation officer, the last thing needed to secure his release. In August of 1999, Jimmy was finally free, almost a year ahead. So, yeah, almost a year. Not even. Almost a year after he'd been first taken to Springfield. Oh, so he spent almost a year in Springfield.
Oh.
That's a while in that place.
So he did almost 2. So he did 2 years, approximately. Wow.
Jimmy's father made a 3-hour drive to pick him up. He and his father spent as much time together after this, after, you know, getting out and seeing his father almost die while he was locked up. And he said, I heard an interview with him where he said that he just really, they didn't even do much. Like before this had happened, they took their time for granted. Like they were so obsessed with money and objects, the new cars and motorcycles and businesses they were starting that
It can consume you.
yeah, after this, they were just so appreciative of each other's company that they would just sit there and fish for hours or just sit in a lawn chair on the property and just...
They've both been humbled.
Yes.
In like a crazy way, right?
Life has a way of doing that to certain people that need it.
Because his dad probably felt invincible and so the thing...
They were the Keens, man.
Yeah, the stroke kind of brought him back down to earth, and then Jimmy kind of felt like he was
Close call.
invincible as far as he could do whatever he want. Ultimate freedom. I can go here. I can work for these people, and then boom, all your freedom's gone.
Yeah.
You have a different lease on life, and you come back 2 years later.
Yeah. And you could have been in there for another 8 years. Easily.
Ooh, yeah.
Probably should have been. You didn't get the job done, Jimmy.
Yeah, right.
Failed.
In all fairness, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain.
Right.
Yep. Well, oh well. Well, I'm glad it worked out for him, though.
Yeah.
I don't think he deserved 10 years, man.
No. Well, maybe he's moving some big time drugs, working with the cartel and shit. He was no small time drug dealer.
Yeah, but you know, you're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah. In November of 2004, Big Jim died of a heart attack. If Jimmy had not accepted Beaumont's mission, he would have still been in prison when his father died, and he would have lost out on all that precious time he spent with him.
Yep.
Now, there's so much where you could really do a full other episode on Larry Hall as a serial killer and all the different ties he has to all the different missing girls.
But it's just that. It's ties. It's like the
ties,
Ivan
yeah.
Milat case. It's just like, yeah, he probably killed her, but we don't know anything else, and the dude don't talk.
Right.
So
And when he does, he immediately recants it.
he recants everything. So we don't know. But it does seem like the stuff that he says, regardless of whether he recants it or not, turns out to be true. A lot of the stuff that he said.
Right.
So
Yeah. While much identifies Larry Hall as a serial killer to a savvy investigator, several aspects of both his personal history and criminal behavior are unique. First and foremost, no other documented serial killer has an identical twin. Hall has a dependent personality and rarely displays anger. He also defies easy classification into categories to criminologists used to distinguish different types of offenders that commit sexual abuse. So he's not fitting into the normal categories that they look for with serial killers. He was both organized and disorganized in the way he commits crimes. The abduction and subsequent murder of Jessica Roach was very disorganized, and yet notes found in his van and room indicated he was a predator who stalked and killed with the utmost care. Yeah, he had weird notes like a honeydew list, like okay, clean saw blade, or like dispose of saw blade, clean carpet. Like all this checklist of shit to do after
take
he would
off
kill a
wheels,
girl.
clean mud from fender wells.
Right.
Random stuff like that. Yeah.
No DNA evidence equals, conviction, like shit like that. Like literally like a how-to list on how to get away with killing people.
Yeah,
And
why would you write that stuff down? But then, then you have those dreams, quote unquote. It's like, what are you doing? Are you writing that stuff down to remember in your dreams?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
In his notes, he labeled his prey in terms that don't suggest sex or even that they are people at all. He would label them in terms as like prospects, joggers and bikers, singles, walkers. Sometimes he slips out of his impersonal shorthand. Seen many nice girls, which is another quote they found in there. He says of one location. Another notes reminds him to take a lot of clothes, blankets to keep her out of sight.
Oh, shit.
Hall used his own shorthand to refer to locations that he scouted, 2 of which were small community colleges bordered by residential streets. Other notes were less mundane. buy new tarp to cover whole rear, no exposed carpet, no remnants, no body contact, buy condoms, buy 2 more leather belts, take buck knife, gloves, mask. You know, that's kind of like the magazine picture of a girl with the, like, you don't ever write that down unless you're a serial killer.
You don't write that down unless you're a serial killer.
No one's ever written down, buy new tarp to cover whole rear, no exposed carpet, no remnants, no body contact, no buy.
I'm going to go on record and say no one's ever written that down for any reason other than being a serial killer.
Right.
All those things.
Yeah, Many people involved with investigating Larry Hall over the years believe that his twin brother Gary had a larger role to play than anyone had anticipated or realized. And Larry Hall himself, later in interviews with that author that I talked about that wrote the book on him that became friends with him, Larry said that he had at times 2 accomplices on some of these crimes, and many of them he had one which is suspected to be his twin brother. And his twin brother already admitted to the police that they had fucking raped a girl.
And a lot of times they had that quote unquote third male guy in the van or whoever it was.
The other guy that would go on the reenactments with him.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, that's so creepy, man. But Gary, if I had to bet, man, I'd definitely say he's in on it.
Yeah.
Or maybe that first thing, like I said, when they took advantage of that girl, you know, when he did admit to that, he basically admitted to rape, pretty much. Maybe that was the first time, and maybe Larry learned something.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
No, and maybe that's how Gary's involved.
Right. And these killings started way back in, supposedly, according to Larry, in 1981 was his first victim.
Damn.
After he was arrested, Larry called his father and asked him to remove some items he had in old vehicles he had stored at his friend's house. One of the items was a big map of Indiana with more than 20 red marks on it and the letters DB written beside each one. At the bottom of the map, DB equaled dead body.
No shit.
Clever guy.
He put a legend for his own map.
Right. Why not just fucking draw skull and crossbones on each location? Larry's father burned the map and the rest of the items as instructed. You know, his parents always defended them. It was probably the girl's fault that he killed them, I'm sure,
definitely.
according to his family.
That map was probably just where people died in war reenactments. Probably not real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as we mentioned his first alleged victim in August of 1981. She's still missing. Deborah Jean Cole, she was 12 years old, was last seen at her home in Lebanon, Indiana. He is suspected in her disappearance. It goes on and on. 22-year-old alleged victim in 1985. Another 22-year-old victim in 1985, Maurice Fuller Swinford. And 23, alleged victim Denise Flume. 1986, another 23-year-old victim, alleged victim, Jane Doe, was found in southern Illinois. Her body was exhumed in 2002 and identified as from California, named Folia Chavez in 1986. Another alleged victim, Kimberly Ann Thompson, in 1987. Linda Weldy, alleged victim.
Yeah.
Another one in 1987. Another one in 1987. Another one in 1987. He was really on a roll in 1987. Like 4 24-year-old suspected victims.
Yeah, but you don't know that all those were his, though. They could have just somewhat matched the MO.
Right.
But he also carried a large bag of lime in his van, which helped with decomp.
Yeah.
So that's probably why, I noticed you said some Jane Does on that list. That's probably why. He probably really used a lot of lime on them, and then it could have been just the length of time in which somebody found them.
And the author of that book, Urges, A Chronicle of a Serial Killer, Christopher Martin, he had asked him that question, Larry Hall, because Larry Hall saying at one point he said he had killed 39, and he wouldn't say which women and all that, but he said that this author asked him, "How did you dispose of these? How did you get away with it for so long?" And Larry Hall's one of his methods for disposal was cutting them up, and then it was like the Kansas City butcher, where he would put them in. He knew when the trash guys would come, and he would put them in people's trash in front of their house, knowing the trash would come pick them up and take them off.
Oh my God. Can you imagine if some serial killer dropped a body in your trash and then it got picked up at your house and then they found it?
Right. And then you get that shit pinned on you.
Like it falls out of your
I wouldn't put it in my own trash.
Right. Come on.
Except Bob Berdella did. He put it in his own trash.
Oh, yeah.
On trash day every time.
That's right.
And he got away with it for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them, though, he was burying out in the woods with lime. Mm-hmm. Or we just coating them with lime.
Right. But yeah, all through, there was 4 in 1988. Let's see. Looks like 5 in 1989. 3 in 1990.
Does that add up to 39?
2 in 1990. Wait. 5 in 1991. Dude, it just all the way up to when he got caught, pretty much.
And how many is that total? Is it 39?
This list is about 39. Yeah, 39 alleged victims.
Oh, that's strangely specific, especially since he said he had 39.
Yep. 4 admitted.
Interesting.
4 admitted, 40 alleged, 14 found, 54 total is what this list says.
Oh.
But it's one of those things where it's like you're
Yeah.
talking so many different states. Look, states where killings occurred: Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Alabama. These are all these alleged victims. So I feel like some of them, they're just like, it's convenient to connect them to them,
Yeah.
you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like anywhere where there's reenactments going on and a woman ended up missing. Or
Right. And
killed.
and that's not to say these women aren't on other people's
Right.
lists either.
There's probably a lot of crossover
Yeah,
to a lot of
there's
these
a lot of
victims as
crossover.
well. And a lot of them are Jane Doe's still. So
Yeah.
who knows what happened.
Right.
But he definitely killed a lot of girls. And he admits that. He's just not giving details because he wants a deal.
Right.
That's all it comes down to. And he's
makes
not going to
sense.
get a fucking deal, so nothing's ever going to happen.
Right. Just
He'll
let
go
him
to the
rot in there.
grave. He'll go to the grave and hopefully hell, if there is one.
Right. If anybody's going, it'd be somebody like that.
Yeah. All right.
Well, good case, man.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed it. It was
pick.
an interesting tale with a lot of different
A lot of
fucking
moving
running
parts
parts to it. Yep.
Yeah.
And we want to thank everyone, and we want to talk about our premier sponsor, right?
Our sponsor.
Oh my Gaia.
Gaia.
Oh my God.
Helps keep this well-oiled podcast machine running, or at least smelling better. Oh My Gaia is an innovative all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural paraben and aluminum-free organic ingredients. They have tons of scents. There's vanilla, cherry almonds, sandalwood, lavender, lemon. I like that music, man. That's pretty good. Yeah, okay. Lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle. And guess what? We have our very own scent, True Crime Pine. And also left out barbershops. One of my
Say
favorites.
what?
But yes, True Crime Pine.
TCP is exquisite.
It is. It
It's-
is. And we definitely have the coolest logo. Not to knock any of the other ones,
But it's got our
ours
faces
has our
on it.
faces on it. But anyways, since you are a True Crime Guys listener, you can use the code CREEPER, CREEPER, for 15% off your first order at Shop Oh My Gaia on Instagram.
Start the new year out smelling right, guys. It should be part of your resolution to not stink. Don't smell like shit anymore. Get some
Right.
Oh My Gaia.
Well,
Use our
but-
code word. Save some money.
Exactly. And you can do that at shop _ Oh My Gaia on Instagram or ohmygaia.com, which is OHMYGAIA.com.
Yeah. I want to thank the people that have donated for stickers since our last episode. And so if you want to do that, go to truecrimeguys.com, click on stickers, donate a few bucks, whatever you want to send. I will send you an envelope with some stickers and a personalized note. Since the last episode, we have Danielle Boggs in West Virginia. We got Bill in, I don't know. I think I sent a separate email. Jennifer K in Sunnyvale, California. We got Matthew in Connecticut. And we got Lisa in, yeah, she sent me a separate email. Yeah, if you don't send your address with it, guys, send us a separate email. Most of the time, PayPal has your address attached. Sometimes it doesn't.
Right?
So, yeah.
Is that all of them?
Yeah,
For now?
go ahead and do
All
something
right.
else.
We got some new reviews. These are some new 5-star reviews from America. We appreciate that very much. These are ones that were written out. If you go and click 5 stars, we appreciate that as well. That helps the show a lot. But we want to give a shout out to Ellie Watts, Mare81, Jenny LK, Happy Taco 0187, Amy the MC, Crystal Ann Nicole, Romans R Us 77, Snoopy Noodle. We gotten a lot of reviews lately. Thank you guys so much.
Oh, yeah.
Davey Sejo, Caleb Brook 12, Mark the Real Shark, Fasiskin? I don't know. That's not even a word, guys, but we appreciate it. And MZ Nettles. Thank you guys so much for those 5-star reviews. We really appreciate it. It helps the show just as much as anything, really. I mean, aside
Right.
from donating or being a patron.
Wherever you can review, Stitcher, whatever. iTunes definitely helps. But yeah,
Yeah, all that helps,
yep. Tell a friend as well.
right?
Talk about us on social media.
But the best way to support the show is on Patreon,
Patreon.com/truecrime guys.
right?
You got
$2
a
a month.
taste. You got a big, nice, delicious bite with the Jonestown episode. 3 hours
Right.
long.
Yep.
There's plenty more where that came from.
There is.
$2 a month gets
Like-
you all those episodes.
It's got to be like almost 20 episodes by now.
I think it's at least 20.
Okay,
Might be over.
nice. And
but-
a lot of those episodes are longer. Like a lot of them are at least 2 hours.
Yep.
There's a lot of extra bonus content, and we're hopefully we're going to release some Patreons in the middle of the month now this year in 2019.
We got to do the giveaway.
We do need to do the
We
giveaway.
need to do the giveaway.
Let's do that.
Let's do the giveaway right now.
All right, let's do it.
We're going to pause this and do some space magic, and then we'll be right back with the Patreon giveaway. If you're a Patreon
Right.
member, active right now, you're in this giveaway. And we don't do giveaways on Patreon because they don't allow us, but we can do it on a normal episode.
Exactly. Haha, suckers.
All right, we're back from pausing time. It's magic.
All right, you ready?
And we've got a random number generator. Mm-hmm. It's between 1 and how many Patrons are we at right now? It's in the 600s, right?
Currently 644.
All right, between 1 and 644. We don't discriminate no matter what pledge you are per month. You're in this
Exactly.
to win it. And here we go, drum roll.
Here we
He's going to
go.
hit the random number generator and figure out who's getting this giveaway.
And
What number?
87.
87. 87. I like that number.
Scrolling.
Who was 87?
Jerry Higa.
Jerry Higa.
Ah,
Right on. Jerry Higa.
Nice.
Congratulations. You are going to get to choose anything from one of our stores,
Mm-hmm.
and we will have it sent to you.
I'll reach out to you on Patreon. I'll send you a message if you're not hearing this or you don't contact us first. And yeah, just pick anything you want, and we will send it to you.
All right. We're back next week with a Patreon episode, right?
Yes.
Patreon exclusive
Patreon
next week,
exclusive
guys.
next
so now's
week.
the time to join. If you haven't joined yet, it's a new year. Get it right. Get it right.
Get right. Get right. Get with Patreon.
Or keep freeloading. That's cool, too.
Right. You
It's
can
all
do
good.
that. And
We
you can
love all
find
you.
us. You can also find us on social media
At True Crime Guys.
at True Crime Guys, Instagram,
At True Crime Guys.
Twitter,
At True Crime Guys.
Facebook. Just search True Crime Guys. Or you can be a part of True Crime Guys closed group if you want to talk with other creepers. Chris Sharp would love to have you on there. Michelle K.
Michelle K.
2 of our administrators. They would love to have you guys on there. And they're fun, and they're always posting funny stuff and memes and stuff.
Memes and stuff.
Anything else?
Anything else?
Are you just repeating what I'm
Yes.
saying?
That's the point of the show we're at.
Yeah.
All right, guys, say it
You're
so
not
I
even
can
trying anymore.
say it so I can repeat.
All right. Keep creeping, guys.
Keep creeping.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.